My name is Mike Hardy, and welcome to this first of 7 community meetings organized by the Department of Water Resources to provide information and answer questions related to the Lake Oroville spillways. My name is Mike Hardy, and I'm a principal with Kearns & Weston. We'll be providing facilitation for tonight, so I'm just going to work with you on a couple of basics through the evening so that you can get the information you need and ask the questions you'd like to ask. Don't ask me a technical question. I'm not the right person to do it. But there are a lot of people here tonight to answer the questions that you have, and that's primarily why we have set up the meeting the way we have. So thank you for your patience. I just want to talk to you really quickly about how we're going to do this. If we could get the next slide moved up to number 2 there. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I've got the clicker right there. Aha, I'm empowered. Okay, great. So here's how the meeting is organized. It's basically around 3 topics and 3 questions just for this presentation, and then we will talk about anything that you would like to have answered. The first is what happened to the main and emergency spillways in February and March, and what was the response? So that's the first part of the presentation. The second one is recovery. What's happening today and what's happening in the future to repair the main and emergency spillways? And then the third question is what are the likely community impacts of the recovery and how can they be addressed? And we have hopefully had people available and answering any questions you had about some of those topics beforehand, but we're going to spend as much time as we need to tonight directly answering questions or comments you have. All right, so I don't want you to be concerned that the meeting's going to end. We'll stay as long as it's important to you and as long as you can manage with some of these chairs. You may want to rotate through occasionally. All right. Let's see, I think I can move this next slide. Okay, so here's the agenda. I'm not going to speak very much. We're going to have some introductions. Acting Director Croyle is going to introduce his team, and then we're going to have some initial comments that will be very brief by some of your elected officials who have been spending a tremendous amount of time paying attention to both the response and the recovery, and I know you have been in touch with them as well. And then we're going to get right into the topics that I've identified, and primarily after the presentation, which shouldn't take too long, we're going to get to your Q&A. All right, just a couple of guidelines for tonight. They won't be a surprise to you. There's no question that people have different views and some really strong feelings, and some of you have had some really difficult experiences associated with the events in February and March. If we need to turn up the volume, we can. My request to you so we can be successful tonight is to be respectful to presenters, to commenters, even if you disagree. Second, if you would follow the process that we are asking you to follow, particularly using the speaker cards, it will help make this orderly. We can get all your questions and we won't have to have people lining up. We'd like to keep things as comfortable as possible. So that's the basic process. If you'll honor time limits, if you want to make a comment, or limit that to 3 minutes. But you got your full 3 minutes. But there are plenty of other people who would also like to comment and questions, so we'd ask you to honor those time limits. And there is the cell phone request, right? If you can. We're not in, this would be a really big airplane, but airplane mode works, or if you want to turn those off so we can really be focused on the meeting. Okay, so what I'd like to do, Director Croyle, is have you introduce yourself and your team, and then we'll hear from some of our elected officials, and then we'll get right into the presentation.
Good evening. Whoa, is that loud? Is that too loud? Okay, good. Usually it's not a problem hearing me. This is a big group. My name is Bill Croyle. I'm the acting director for the California Department of Water Resources. Many of you I've met, many of you I have not. Tonight, I want to make sure that you come to get your questions, your comments heard, your questions asked, and hopefully we can answer them. I want to start off by saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry you have to be here tonight. I'm sorry for the impact of this event on your lives and our communities. I'm sorry for the impact on our department and many other responding agencies and independent contractors to this process. So the department is committed to see this thing through, hopefully addressing your concerns, comments, your perspectives as we move through this together. This has been a busy 12 weeks, and it's going to be a busy year and probably busy in the years to come as we first kind of get through the response phase of this process into the recovery phase, which kind of start at the same time, and we'll talk more about that tonight. The department is committed to this process. There's a lot of people in this room that come from the Department of Water Resources, but also I want to acknowledge many other agencies that have come to support the department during this difficult time. Some of those are local, cities, counties, law enforcement, our emergency managers, our legislators at both the state and the federal level that have come, and we've all spent a lot of time trying to work through this process together. And again, I want to reiterate our commitment to making sure that the Department of Water Resources sees this thing through. Okay, we're, as many of you have heard or read, we're absolutely committed to constructing a spillway in the place of our damaged spillway. So we're ready to go for November 1st, later this year. So we're currently spilling about 35,000 cubic feet per second off the spillway. This process that we've been through here in the last number of weeks, where we've kind of spilled over the spillway, this damaged spillway, turned it off, turned it back on, is how we've managed to move a historic amount of water through this reservoir and through our levee system downstream. So in 50 days, in January and February, we moved over 4.4 million cubic acre feet of water through the system, which is equal to what we would do in 1 year. So we are historic precipitation, snowfall and rain that fell in this watershed in Northern California. I don't believe that precipitation caused this incident, but I think because the incident did occur, we did pass that much water on a broken spillway, and I think that does speak to the engineering that does exist and that infrastructure that's still on the mountain. And it also is a result of a lot of dedicated work by not just the department, but a lot of other agencies and independent contractors to protect the infrastructure that was still there so that we can make sure we make it through this historic hydrologic setting that we've had this year, record snowpack, record rainfall, in a way that we do not flood these downstream communities. Okay, so far that's worked very well. We're on kind of in the middle of this snowmelt process. We've done very well in managing those inflows to the reservoirs. The weather's starting to turn a little bit warmer now. We are in spill. We actually look like we're going to come off of spilling. In other words, we'll close the gates on the spillway somewhere around May 1st, here in the coming week, maybe Monday, depending on if it gets warm, maybe Tuesday, but I think on...
That one's buzzing a little bit. Yeah. It says too much buzzing.
We're not going to buzz, all right? Okay. That hurt. Sorry about that. So I want to make sure that as we close these gates, we're going to need to spill one more time based on the snowpack, our modeling runs, our available storage space. And so when we go, and I haven't heard actually how much time it'll be before we open the gates up again, but there will be a short period of time when we open the gates again, spill, and then close the gates for the last time so that we can get into the reconstruction of the lower spillway. So we're going to talk a little bit about that spillway construction tonight, this evening. But before we get into this, our conversation tonight, one of the things I want to focus on is making sure we have enough time to get through your comments and your questions and our responses. And if we don't have the answer tonight, I apologize, but we're going to write those down. We have recorders around the room so we can get those answers back to this community and other communities that have maybe the same question. Okay, so we're going to move through this. I want to maximize our time to, again, provide to you to ask those questions or make your comments. But I also wanted to remind the crowd to kind of pass the word. We are trying to improve our community outreach and discussion, the opportunity for you to be engaged and to understand, again, what happened and what will be happening here in the coming weeks and months. So we have 7 of these type of community meetings coming up. So if you know somebody that couldn't be here tonight, I want to make sure you contact one of our staff or myself so that we can make sure that we can get you that information and we can make sure that they can attend or at least receive the information from the result of these community meetings. I also want to hear from you on the format of this discussion, the content, and we got a lot of people here tonight, so I think we do need to move fast through this process, but I want to make sure that we have enough time. We're not leaving until we'll at least hear from you, okay? But I also want to make sure we get the feedback on how we should do these next couple of meetings. We're taking advantage of the community meetings, which I was able to attend some of with Chair Foney on the evacuation mapping, and so we're taking a big hint from him. Assemblyman Gallagher, I think, also provided some excellent comments about kind of reformatting this meeting, so it's a combination of a number of things. I appreciate the comments to make sure that we're communicating with you in a way that, again, addresses your questions and comments. So there's a conversation just made about our PowerPoint presentation. So I want to go through that, but I don't, because I want to make sure we're spending time to make sure we're engaging you. So what I thought I might do is start that process. There's a couple slides that I kind of want to focus on, maybe on what happened and what this looked like for those that haven't seen it. But I also don't want to spend a huge amount of time doing this. Okay, excellent. And so I want to reach out to Senator Nielsen and Assemblyman Gallagher if you would like to say anything before we jump into the presentation.
Well, folks, thank you for coming, and this is your meeting, and there are going to be several more of these meetings. Tuesday, we had a hearing in the Senate Resources Committee on this very issue. There will be more. I think Assemblyman Gallagher will be telling you some equal meetings being held in the Assembly. We'll be doing some joint ones, too. The whole key is to get things fixed, to state of the art, to get answers, so all of us do not have to suffer these things in the future. And where there have been the errors in not maintaining infrastructure, that's not going to happen again. Fortunately, we got through this one, but I find no comfort in that. Nor will we for, frankly, some years to come. This isn't just about fixing the spillway. This is about the levees, and not just the river levees, the bypass levees. Those are flood control facilities as well. We have to pay attention to the entire system. all of the tributary impoundments around here, the lakes, they have their impact too. We're watching it all. Our job is to work on your behalf, to be your conscience, to be your advocates. And I know that Congressman Lamothe and Assemblyman Gallagher had to actually evacuate. We didn't because we live on the Sacramento River, but we sure been spending a lot of time, like you, watching that river. This is about public safety, and this is about the one thing that government absolutely owes the people: trust. We're working on that with you together. James and I are glad to be with you here tonight.
Well, I'll be really brief because the point of this tonight is to hear from you and let your voice be heard and have your questions be answered. As your representative, I've been through this with you. My family was evacuated. I've been through the fears of this whole thing, through the questions, and I've channeled those things back to the Department of Water Resources over these past couple months now. And Bill Coyle can attest to that. He's a lot of calls, a lot of talks that we've had. We haven't always agreed on everything, but I will say this: I'm committed to an open dialogue and communication. That's what this is about tonight. As your representative, I've channeled those things, but I wanted them to hear directly from all of you. And that's why we've really been pushing to have these town hall meetings. And the department has been very responsive to that and responsive to our suggestions. One of them is having an open forum meeting like this so that we can all hear each other's questions and hear the answers together. Another of them is releasing the Board of Consultants reports, and I'm very glad to see that they have done that last week. That's important because we want to know, hey, what are the discussions going on up there about how to put this thing back and put it back right. So with that, I want to turn it over because it's time to hear from you and to get information and have an exchange and discussion. Thank you all for being here tonight, taking time away from your families to be part of this discussion.
Lieutenant Bell, do you want to say a comment on behalf of the sheriff?
Thanks, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm Lieutenant Bell with the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Honey obviously wasn't able to attend tonight. He had an engagement that he just couldn't get out of, but he wanted me to convey his sincere apologies for not being here. One of the other things that he wanted me to make a point of and convey to all of you is that the Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Honey are still, just like we were from the beginning, working side by side with DWR, trying to keep the lines of communication open and make sure that everybody knows that public safety is in his mind and Sheriff's Office mind and DWR as well. So I just want to make that very brief. It's a wonderful turnout. Thank you very much for coming.
So with that, I'm sitting here wanting to get on with the comments and questions. And so I'm going to move through. I'm not going to do all the slides because I want to get on with the comments and questions. But what I want to do is maybe just in the context when we're talking about things, and I'm going to try to make sure I don't misspeak, especially when we're talking the various types of spillways. I'm hoping this is a laser. Uh-oh. It's not the laser. There we go. Oh, there we go. I don't know if everyone can see that. You probably can't see over here. So with regard, just kind of the lay of the land, hopefully most of you have been able to visit the reservoir and the dam, but we have the dam itself. Again, the dam has not been impacted by this event. The dam is safe, it's solid. It's one of the best constructed reservoirs or the dam structures in the United States. The Hyatt Powerhouse is down here on the lower right. The spillway that we'll be talking quite a bit about is right here. The upper chute is still the kind of the white area. What we call the lower chute is this area that's been dramatically impacted by the amount of water that we had to push down through this canyon this year. And then this other area to the left is the emergency spillway, flowing all the way down to the diversion pool down below. This is what resulted on February 7th. This is a major failure of the spillway. So part of the conversation in the first few hours and day or so was, can you fix this? And so people were trying to figure out how to fix this. When I looked at the hydrograph, we were looking at, a decision that had to be made, in my opinion, in a matter of hours because of the current reservoir inflow and incoming wet weather. There was no way you're going to fix this in a matter of 4 to 6 hours. This hole in the upper part in this area originally started when I first saw it at 175 feet across, 250 feet wide, and about 30 to 40 feet deep. So it's not something that you can fix in a matter of 4 hours. Some of the preventative measures we had to do. One of the just amazing stories in this response is the effort by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, saving over 6 million fish, many of which were rare and endangered. One phone call to Director Bonham, myself and I said, we have a problem and we need to really mitigate that impact on the fish hatchery down below, which set off a whole chain of activities, which again is an amazing feat of what a number of volunteers and Department of Fish and Wildlife staff did to save these fish and move those out to the Highway 99 or Thermalito fish hatchery. Major, unprecedented success story in a very, very difficult time. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but the current setting is a little funny looking graphic over here on the left. Again, California and primarily Washington received an unprecedented over 35 what we call atmospheric rivers that hit the coast this year. Normally we might get 2 or 3, which resulted in our excessive historic snowpack and rainfall for not just California, but also the Northwest. So we had to increase flows in the spillway, knowing that when we're all done, what I told a lot of the public through the media outlets is what you see today, you're not going to see tomorrow, because we had to move water out of this reservoir in a way so we did not, lose control of the inflows and outflows from this reservoir. We knew that this process was going to tear up the lower spillway. What you see here is the spillway being damaged, going down this canyon here, which resulted in a major debris field at the very bottom, which prevented us from using the Hyatt powerhouse and threatened that powerhouse. So here's the emergency spillway. We can come back to some of these as results in our discussion here tonight. Evacuations ordered on the 12th. This is a graphic of the again, unprecedented activities by our staff that went down to the powerhouse and checked its waterproofing while the rest of us were evacuating. They went down the hill to make sure that we waterproof and maintain that flood protective measures so that when this was all over, we could use this power plant later this year, which was a success. This effort in this time of extremely difficult situations, these people went down the hill to save that plant so we could all have water in the Feather River this spring and summer and fall. That's a graphic of the inflow. This is kind of the problem that we had, and we can come back to that. It's kind of nerdy. We love these, sorry. Let me know if you can't hear me with the mic drifts down. So this is kind of our restoration recovery project. So I'll quickly cover this and then we'll move on. So we break this project into 3 areas. One is the upper chute, the lower chute, which has been damaged here, that we see all the way to the bottom here, and then the emergency spillway area over here. So one of our priority areas is this upper chute. So we'll start rebuilding some of that. A lot of that was not necessarily impacted by this. Some of it was damaged, but we're looking at replacing the whole thing, if not all this year, by the end of next construction season. The lower chute is an area that we're focusing on here. So we'll be rebuilding this lower chute. For the first year, our goal is to meet 100,000 CFS with a contingency plan to move another 50, if needed, off to the side and go down this canyon that's been formed by the erosion. The emergency spillway, the mitigation work we're going to do there is we're going to start with this cutoff wall down at the bottom. So you dig this concrete reinforced structure down to bedrock, and then come up here and put our buttress in with this reinforced or this rolled concrete, and then build what we call a splash pad between the two. This will prevent future erosion if we ever had to use it again. We're not ever planning to use it again by design, to be clear, but it is there for a reason. It's there for when it's an emergency. We don't ever, none of us want to see this used again, to be clear. But this mitigation measure will prevent the erosion that happened this last year. Okay, this mitigation, this dam, the geotech information that we're collecting now, it looks like this, the structure itself is good, but the erosion is not. And so that's the mitigation measure that we're putting in place, all three of those components. And again, we'll start that work here shortly. And here's kind of the timeline for that. We can talk more about this as we get into your questions. Well, there's different ways to get a hold of us. Now I think let's get on with comments, questions, etc.
I have a first batch of speaker cards. Some of you asked me to read your question for you, and if others of you want to ask your own question, then we'll just have you come up to the microphone if you want to ask the question. But thank you for filling out these cards. So this first question, and I really want to apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. So is it Taisha Tiara or Tiara? I hope I didn't get that too bad. So the question is, how much water can flow through Hyatt Power Plant?
Okay, the Hyatt Power Plant right now is having 7,000 CFS per second, last I checked. Again, a nod from our operator over here. That's good, so I got the right answer. Typically, we have one penstock out right now, so we're doing the preventative maintenance to make sure it's ready to go for the rest of this season. Turbine 1 is out of place, and so that'll be put it back in place later this year. So when we have all 6 turbines going, it's about 15,000 CFS. So this summer, we'll be running at a maximum of about 12,800 or 13,000 at most. And then we also have the 2 river valves that will be able to be used here in the coming week if needed. So that gives us another 4,000 CFS. So for the summer, until we get turbine 1 replaced, we'll have somewhere around 17,000 CFS.
So Bill, there's a related question, and that is to explain the function of the power plant, and particularly clarify why Hyatt is not enough for high inflows. In other words, why do you need more than the capacity of Hyatt in order to deal with the inflows to the reservoir?
So as it relates to, well, normally, we have a limitation on the size of the turbines that bring water down through the system, and those turbines produce power. Those turbines also need to be hooked to the grid. They cannot operate without being hooked to the grid, which was part of our emergency response activities. But once you reach that max, if the inflow into the lake during the flood season exceeds that, then we have to store water in the lake. Normally that's done within the flood control volume that's reserved in the lake for flood control. And so if we receive inflows in excess of, say, that 12,800 or 13,000 that we have right now, then we have to store that water. And so this, at the peak, wettest part of this spring, of winter actually, we saw 191,000 CFS coming into the reservoir. That's far beyond the capacity of both the turbines. If we had all 6, it would be 15,000 plus the 4 river valves. Now that peak was only for a short period of time, but that much water coming into the reservoir uses up a lot of flood control space in just a matter of hours. That's why we have to turn the spillway on to operate the flood control elevation within that reservoir based on the incoming weather, but also the snowpack. So if the very cold storm, I think all this late winter and fall, we had amazingly cool storms, unprecedented cool storms. So we got a lot of snow, but the way it came was in a form that allowed us to manage those inflows and really not use the spillway at the higher rates of say 100 or 150,000 like we did in 1997.
Next question.
The person that asked that question, I'm not sure who asked that question. Sorry.
I think you've done a good
Okay.
job with that one. And if there needs to be follow-up, please come find us, and if there's follow-up questions, then we'll track the questions down and get you an answer.
Okay.
Okay, so the next question is a little bit different direction, Director. It has to do with screening workers for drugs. Why doesn't DWR screen all workers for drugs rather than leaving it up to private contractors to screen their staff? Is this a question that you wanted to ask your Zane, is that right?
Hi, my name is Zane Liebert. Is this on?
Can we turn that microphone on? I think it's on.
Red light on there.
You're on.
Okay, thanks. Okay, my biggest concern was back when the construction's repair work started in, I understand there was like 15 employees let go due to various reasons, and 5 of them were had some drug failure, failed the test. So basically, I understand that at that point, I understood that the DWR screens their employees for drugs, but yet we allow the contractors to screen their own employees. And to me, that doesn't seem quite as safe as I'd like to have it, because I would think for general public safety, you'd want to screen every employee up there as a kind of a norm to make sure we don't have contractors that, have Uncle Joe and somebody else coming up there that may have had some drug issues, and they let them go ahead and work because they need the money. I'm not sure if that all happens, but for public safety purposes, I would think that you would want to screen every employee up there and put in contracts that when they do come up to work to make their contribution to repair the spillway area or whatever, that you would have them say, hey, we're going to screen you guys no matter what. It's not going to be up to you guys to screen. It's going to be up to DWR to screen every employee at this site, because that is public safety is our main concern. So I'm hoping that you will at least try to do something about that. I understand there's different wording in contracts and things, but for public safety purposes, I think it's important that everybody's screened properly.
Yeah. Thank you.
We get stuck with the bill with that, screening the employees.
You want to?
Just received this comment.
Okay, so I think that's a comment and a suggestion that there be screening, so you've got it. Okay, next. This is a card from, is it Reggie Graywolf? Did you want me to read the question? Do you want to ask the question? What would you like?
I'll ask the question.
Why don't you, if you could just go over to the microphone there.
Hand her the
My name is Reggie.
Gray Wolf, and I'm from Oroville. I'm a professional responder along with disabled. I have a broken neck that's never been able to be healed, along with a broken back. Grow the greatest arthritis in the world, fibromyalgia, and I still do my job. Been watching for 16 years. Been watching for 16 years that spillway, doing kayaking and everything. Why in the world would you tell me at a radio station that I worked at to have everybody pack their bag, but wait for Sunday after you guys have already evacuated the Oroville Rescue Mission along with the jail, and then tell me to let everybody know that we're evacuating? I live in Olive Hill Mobile Home Park, Senior Park. I saw all my neighbors fall apart, including me. Why? I had $5 in my pocket and nowhere to go. I love Oroville. It's a great community. Why did you do that to us?
Yeah. The department doesn't evacuate people. We're part of the decision-making process, standing side by side with the sheriff and making sure he had all the information he needed as we all.
So you're wondering why you had gotten an evacuation notice initially and then waited and then were told to evacuate? Am I hearing that right?
Radio, KROB radio and KOYO were told, we as employees were told to let our community know to pack their bags and be ready, just in case, but that there was no problem, that we were safe. And then Sunday came, poof, I get a call from somebody that works at the dam and says, Reggie, get on the radio right now, we're evacuating. It was too late. I live on Lower Wyandotte Road at Olive Hill Community Park. Everybody went crazy. Why did the jail and the Oroville Rescue Mission get evacuated before we got notified? Everybody else was to be evacuated.
Well, I know we had some very distinct challenges in evacuating certain areas, one of which was areas such as care homes and things like that, where we had to arrange for transportation and such to help people evacuate. So
I don't think it's the sheriff's fault. I think it's the water fault.
well, the sheriff was the one, in conjunction in talking with DWR, we were the ones that actually initiated the evacuations. So, and again, everybody knows that was done in a very emergent type of situation. And one of the things that we have to deal with in something like that is those challenges of getting such a large area of people out in as efficient a manner as we can. And along with that goes a lot of confusion, a little bit of anarchy, and that's what we do, is we try and bring a sense of calm to everything and try and get people out and safe as fast as we can. Something like that, I'll check into that and see how that came about with your guys' location. If I can just get her name so I can get back to her and try and figure out exactly how that came out. Okay?
So I have a card from Don Blake. Don, did you want to ask a question?
I sure do.
Okay, and then next up is, I have a card from Judy Johnson Pruitt. You'll be up next, and just let me know if you'd like me to read your question or you'd like to come up to the microphone.
Well, hello, Mr. Croyle. My name is Don Blake. I live in Oroville. And first of all, I think we all ought to rejoice. Spring is here, and the snow melt runoff is beginning. Now, according to your website, we have some 4.5 feet of water in the snow at Bucks Lake. 4.5 feet comes up to about my chest. We also have almost 6 feet of water in the snow at Gold Lake. Reggie, you want to stand up? 6 feet of water, that's about the blue stripe on her hat.
It's a good thing I know how to swim.
According to the figures you gave the Board of Consultants last month, we can expect some 2 million acre feet of water to hit the lake in the next month. Now, to my question, on April 13th, you ready? On April 13th, you told the Sacramento Bee that the spillway releases would continue for 10 to 14 days until the lake level was down to 835 feet, which is about 2.6 million acre feet of storage. This is day 14. The lake level today at 1 o'clock this afternoon was 846 feet, or some 2.75 million acre feet in storage. That's a difference of 150,000 acre feet. That difference has already been released down the river. There's no reason to hold it back that I can see. But there may be two reasons you can see. You told lawmakers on Tuesday that your goal is to get the gated spillway strong enough to handle 100,000 cubic feet per second by November 1st. You've said that again here today. That, of course, suggests that the gated spillway, as it stands right now, is not strong enough to handle a normal high flow. You have held releases to 35,000 cubic feet per second since April 13th, increasing that discharge flow only last night to 40,000 cubic feet. So the question becomes, why are you holding the water back? And the first part of my question is this: do you have a concern right now that the gated spillway itself has been so damaged since February that it can no longer safely discharge flows higher than 35,000 cubic feet a second? Now, that's a yes or no question. Please give me your answer.
Yes, it can.
Okay. Then the other alternative is Devin Updehay, Water Resource Manager at the Metropolitan Water District, told the Sacramento Bee on March 31st the Metropolitan Water District wanted to take as much water as possible from Lake Oroville this year to store in their reservoirs in case 2018 turns out to be a dry year. You told the legislators Tuesday that you would shut down the spillway for the season on May 2nd. I'm assuming that you intend to let the snow melt runoff fill the lake once again. So it appears that we have a spillway that does not work properly and that you are shutting down. You have a massive snowpack melt-off just beginning, and you're holding water back in the lake and will be holding water back in the lake for shipment to Los Angeles. Now that is totally insane, Croyle. I had my life threatened, as did 180,000 other people in this area, by your incompetence and your malfeasance in the management of the lake level. It's the same thing that happened in 97. It's the same thing that happened in 86. This is outrageous. I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to go back to your people. You're going to tell them to increase flows through the spillway to get the lake down to 835. You're going to keep the spillway open through May and take all of that snow melt runoff and put it in the river and get rid of it. You're going to keep the lake level at 835 through the fall, winter, and spring of next year, and we're only going to let you fill that lake back up until after we get a fully functional gated spillway in place and working, and get a fully functional emergency spillway in place and working. That's what needs to happen, and you need to do it.
So, Don, I appreciate your comment and your perspective.
I'm going to ask you to let the director answer.
So, I wanted to, what I said tonight, and I told the legislators that we are going to close. We had a 10 to 14 day forecast was our plan. Fortunately, the weather has warmed up. We have higher inflows that have occurred over the last 10 to 14 days, which is good, which is what we want. We want to move more snowpack through this system. And so it's extending that 10 to 14 day till Monday. May 1st is our target date to shut the spillway. It is not the last time we're going to open up the spillway. Our operations plan requires that we will open it up again. We will need to build up the head on the reservoir gates so that we can discharge the amount of water that is safe through the damaged spillway in a way it does not tear it up. So we need to move up somewhere around 860 before we open up that gate. We may open it early. We may wait till 860 before we open it up the last time. Where we stop and close the gate so we can get on construction is a number that we still need to work with our regulatory agencies, primarily FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, on what the safe level is to close that reservoir or close down those gates and start storing water. But because of the typical water use in the reservoir, we will be far lower than 835 or 813 in a matter of a month or so. So we will be off the gates and looking at the snow melt coming in, which is all factored into our reservoir ops plan for the rest of the year. Part of the unknown, frankly, is where we're going to end up, what elevation of the lake will be at the end of the summer on November 1st. And that's a number that is not necessarily set by us. It's a number that, based on our modeling and our discussion with the regulatory agency, is going to give us. Now, I can't speak for MWD. I'm not sure what they said. I wasn't familiar with that conversation. But frankly, MWD has no place to put water right now or this summer. This year, because of the hydrology, more water has been moved south of Delta than has ever happened before. They have no place to store water. All the water contractors that have reservoirs, even groundwater storage, can't take more water south of Delta. They'll take a little extra as they move through so they can top out other reservoirs, but I think the CDEC system speaks for itself. Not me, you don't have to believe me. You can contact MWD and others and find out where that reservoirs. They can't fill some of their reservoirs, like Paris, which is our reservoir. We can't fill that all the way because we're completing our seismic retrofit on that reservoir. But wherever we can push water, we and our contract have already pushed it. We can't pump more water out of the Delta unless they're being used in real time, just like here. So a lot of water is going to come out of this system kind of by design so that we end up going into November 1st with a much lower reservoir elevation based on our regulatory engagement for public safety. Now it's true, we are factoring in water supply and environmental needs as we go through the rest of the year, but we will not be storing water up against the gate, I can assure you, this summer. Now we may start to store water as we move into construction, because the sooner I can get our chief engineer and their construction contractors in that spillway, the faster we're going to, and the more of that spillway that we can complete, especially on the upper deck. So our goal is to manage the inflow, and that comes back down into how much the snow melt, how fast is it coming in, and to the extent that our operators on Hyatt Powerhouse have maintained that at 12,000 CFS, and we believe that we can manage those inflows with seeing no increase in water level, and we'll actually start producing more flood storage within the reservoir. And I would be happy to talk to anyone here in the coming weeks, because we don't have the operation plan finalized for the reservoir yet. That'll be part of our conversation as we move forward later this summer. When that plan's out, we're going to share it with you. You're going to see what we're doing with regard to inflows, reservoir elevations, and where we think we're going to target the reservoir at the end of this year, no matter, frankly, what the condition of the spillway is. But we're going to be ready to pass 150,000 CFS through the spillway by November 1st. That's our commitment to you. So it will be safe.
So the next card I had was Judy Johnson Pruitt.
Sure, question. Can you get back in there?
And then on deck is Blair Porter.
I had my question answered.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
After that, I have Matt Menting.
Hi. My name is Judy Johnson Pruitt, and I'm a lifetime resident of Gridley. And some of my concerns are how the DWR is actually governed. Like, a lot of public agencies either have a board of directors, they have regular meetings where businesses discuss. And at this time, who makes your rules and policies as far as what you're able to do, what you're not able to do? And is there a place or where we can go ongoing once we're past this? Like to read your minutes to see where, when you start to just do the maintenance going forward, that we can see what those plans are, how they're being taken forward, you know, what's said. That's my question.
So with regard to, I mean, this process is, again, the beginning of an ongoing communication with regard to the status of, first, the repairs and recovery of this, but in going into the future. We have our websites, but we're also going to be engaging our local partners, being the city, the counties that are impacted by this, on disseminating information, working with our legislative representatives for this area. So in an effort to bring people along a ride for this, not just this year, but in the future years, is an important part of this conversation. Now, getting back to your question with regard to, you know, governance, is I'm the director, acting director. So I work at the direction of the Secretary of Natural Resources. So he's my boss. He works for the governor's office, or the governor. So we have Chief Deputy, which Cindy Messer's here tonight. Raise your hand, Cindy. And so the two of us are charged with managing over 3,600 people. I would say 36,600 and a half. It's always interesting to budget a half. But a lot of our rules and procedures are set up in either the water code or the typical department administrative processes or records. And so to the extent there's an accountability that goes again through the California Natural Resources Agency, through the Secretary, and ultimately the governor. So I met with Secretary Laird just earlier before lunch today to talk a little bit about what we're doing, have done to date, and also what we're doing here with these number of meetings. He as well is engaged, especially with our legislative members, not with just those reps for this particular area, but also really statewide through the Q&A that they have with him. And then every Tuesday we brief up the governor's office. So their senior policy people and chief of staff are all engaged in the Oroville discussion.
Okay, and then on deck after Matt is Sandra Wollendorf.
Thank you for having me here at the meeting. It's much appreciated. There's a lot of concern out here. In your shoes, you walked into this 6 weeks into acting director. We thank you for sticking around. We thank you for the work that's being done up there. I'm sleeping better at night. I'm a 4-time evacuee. 64, 86, 97, and now this last February. So my concern through most of this has been the operation manual for Oroville Dam. We've evacuated 4 times because what we have is an operational manual that hasn't been working for us, I believe. Now, you say that you're going to be deciding that, and after you decide, you'll be bringing that to us. I think we'd all like to have a say in the process, the transparency. Here you built a design, it went out to bid, you awarded a contract, and then you invite the public in. Let's not do that for the operation manual. And let's not do that when we figure out how we're going to pay for these costs. Let's not have closed doors meetings like we did with the Monterey Amendment, and award these water contracts so they can figure out ways to extend the cost of the repairs over another 15 years of water deals. This dam's going to be ours in 35 years, and we can renegotiate. And one of the things that we can renegotiate is that additional 150,000 acre-feet that Marysville Dam did not give us. I don't know how many. Let me ask the crowd a question here. When Marysville Dam wasn't built, 150,000 acre-feet of water needed to be added to Oroville's dam's 750 for a total of 900,000 acre-feet of flood storage. How many people here know where they put that 150,000 additional acre-feet of water? Do we have a map of the emergency spillway? Do we have a marker? Can I mark on this?
Absolutely.
Here's the emergency spillway. Here's the lake. And this is, what, 901, the height of the emergency spillway? Correct. Okay, we got 750,000 acre-feet of flood storage, right? Marysville Dam didn't get built, so they needed to add another 150. You know where they added it? Does that tell you what kind of transparency you've had here? You want to show them or do you want me to?
Why don't you let people know what you believe the situation is, sir?
Okay.
And,
So in order to give us the extra 150,000 acre-feet, so we don't lose 12 lives in 1986, we don't lose another 3 in 97, we lost 2 this year because these elderly people had a trauma while being evacuated. People are dying here. Because what happens is you put that additional 150,000 acre-feet over the top of the emergency spillway. Those are called surcharge flows. And the idea is that you're going to run 150,000 acre-feet over the emergency spillway, 10 to 12 feet high, as you close the gates on the primary spillway to maintain downstream levee capacities. That's where they put Marysville Dam storage, over the top of the emergency spillways. And how many people knew that? How much more are you going to keep us in the dark as we start looking at operating manuals, as we start looking at how we're going to fund this without tying ourselves into long-range water contracts? We want to be your partners here. We're taxpayers. We're not second-class citizens. We may be simple folks, but we do it for a reason. Because of our values, we trust our name, our word, a handshake. Good people should not be treated like this.
here, I'll put that back. I'll put that back up.
So I appreciate the discussion, the graphics. This is important to hear that perspective from you. Because I think this is an opportunity. I have a question, and because, to be clear, we did not pass the 150,000 over the emergency spillway.
You can only handle 1 foot, right? Not 12 feet. And then if you even handle 1 foot.
Okay. So there's 1.7 feet, or about 12,000 acre feet, as I understand it, went over the emergency spillway, which was not by design. Part of that was trying to manage a broken spillway for the rest of the year. Having been there with a lot of, not just the department, with a lot of regulatory experts in the room, spillway specialists, dam specialists, hydrologists, trying to understand what Mother Nature was throwing at us over a period of a day and a half. We, by design, did not push water over the spillway. But the storm stalled out on us and dumped that 12,000 extra feet, or 1.7 feet, over that spillway for a length of time. So the spillway went over the erosion. We definitely had tried to do some protective measures just in case, because we didn't know if the upper spillway was going to stay intact. And our concern was we would end up with a situation that we would have no control to manage the inflows to the reservoir at any level in the coming weeks and months, going in basically early February. Pretty scary for you, pretty scary for us. So when that happened, that was very difficult, as we saw chunks of the upper spillway break away, and trying to factor in the point that we would have to turn off the gates and go to zero flow to protect the rest of the radial arm gates so that we could get in and protect the city and the downstream water bodies. The challenge with that is, especially with the kind of hydrology that we saw, 191,000 CFS, that means we're definitely going over the sides of the levees. Very difficult to see water at the lip of the emergency spillway, let alone go over. Now, the challenge is we did not anticipate the erosion. There's some discussion in the past about that. That went through a regulatory vetting process and was rejected. They were wrong. We learned a lot, and we're going to fix that. So to the extent that there's 150,000 of flood control storage that should have been in a reservoir upstream, to answer your question from my perspective, that water has to be passed through the spillway during those flood events. So when those, throughout the season, we need to be able to pass that kind of water through the system so that we don't end up compromising our existing flood storage capacity. So I appreciate the question and the graphic. I think it's important to understand, from your perspective, the challenges that we have in front of us. Having the Marysville Reservoir may have changed the dynamics for the last number of years, and I'm sorry that you had to be evacuated 4 times. Nobody wants to do that once. Many of you here were. 4 times is amazing. So I'm sorry for that. So we're going to learn a lot from here, and I think for me what's the comeback, is the input. Your comment is important because we can go back, because part of our conversation is what is the rule curve, or that curve that controls flood storage in this reservoir. Is that the right curve? So we need to work with the Army Corps of Engineers and our hydrologists to get back at that issue, which I think would answer your question. Do we need more flood storage within this reservoir to protect these kinds of events?
If we want to be a part of that discussion, not be a forum after the fact.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And this is Sandra. And up next, just so you know, is Dwayne Walls.
Okay. Is there a floodplain map available for the public?
Is there a floodplain map?
Yeah.
There's a number of different kinds of maps. There's a FEMA flood map for like a 100-year or a 500-year flood map. So in other words, if a 100-year or a 500-year event occurred, what that would look like. But there's also the evacuation maps, which I think Butte County Sheriff's Department led the effort to take the maps that were produced and refine those to be more specific for individual regions based on a new identified threat, which would be if you have to take water over the emergency spillway, at certain volumes, like a 30,000 CFS or 50,000 CFS, what would that do with regard to the downstream water bodies? So those maps are now available online. Yeah, sorry. Am I not answering your question?
No, you are. It's just.
The inundation map is what she's trying to get to you. What is the inundation if we had a failure in the emergency spillway or a failure in the dam? Is that information available to us as what the water levels would be if that amount of water came into our mouth?
All on the internet.
All right, so I know
yes.
there are people here tonight who can actually point you exactly to the source for that information that you're asking for, the inundation maps. And Bill, if you had someone on your staff, or if there's someone here tonight who can.
It's in the presentation.
Yeah.
Is it?
Spillway failure, inundation map?
Well, well, I can't tell what I'm looking at.
So, is this the map that's available through the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Management, or? So the title of this map is.
So I think there's definitely an open question. We need to make sure that people who want
reliable information about what you're describing as the inundation maps need to know where they can get that information. And so that's a follow-up for us tonight. Okay, so thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, now, then there isn't one that would show that?
The map that we have on the screen here is the Oroville Emergency Spillway Hypothetical Failure Inundation Map. So what this color graphic lays out, to be honest, I haven't seen
Okay, I
this map.
can't tell what I'm looking at.
Well, I know, but I
really.
mean, basically there is a map. I think that's answering or addresses your question, so we can make sure that the community has access to this map. And then if it doesn't
Okay,
address
the
your-
reason I've asked is because when the evacuation was called, I didn't evacuate, I just went uphill a little bit because of how my elevation is. But people who were evacuating, they were confused on where to go. They were wanting to head along the river down to like Gridley, Marysville, Yuba City, and that's not the way to go. I think if people knew, if people knew ahead of time, had some kind of map or something, they wouldn't get so excited.
Okay, so Lieutenant, yeah,
That's
thank you.
all I got. Okay.
Thank you. Is your mic on?
Okay. You hear me all right?
There you go.
There we go.
Mic's on.
There we go. The in speaking about knowing ahead of time, that was one of the things that we made a point to remedy right out of the gate with these zone maps that we have on our website. That's on OES website. Instructions on those maps and such on where to go, things like that. We wanted to make sure that we gave people enough time and enough information and knowledge on where you live, where you're supposed to go if we start doing evacuations again. That was our whole point, and our intent is to make sure that all of you were aware ahead of time on what to do, so that if we came and said, look, you need to go, you need to evacuate again, you knew exactly where to go, you knew exactly where you were at, public assembly points, shelters, all of that information. That was our intent on coming up with these maps that we have that are on our website, the Sheriff's Office website, and the County OES website. Okay.
Okay, so the next speaker card I have is for Dwayne Walls. Did you want me to read the question? Would you like to ask the question? I'm willing to read it. Well, I'll read the question. So why, after all these years, haven't annual maintenance and inspection program been implemented?
There you go. That sounds good.
Why, after all these years, hasn't an annual maintenance and inspection program been implemented?
It has. So this facility is inspected by the Department of Safety of Dams, or Division of Safety of Dams, by FERC, the Federal Energy Commission, and an independent consultant team. Normally, we require, or the inspection requires 3 to 5 independents, and the last time this was inspected, including the spillway, had 20 independent people, which is all part of our record, which is all made available on the internet so you can read for yourself. So it's not just the department that's conducting these inspections and following up with any deficiencies that are found in those inspections, but it's done by 2 regulatory agencies and a third party. So I think there's a lot of discussion about maintenance, but I think the maintenance records speak for themselves.
All right, so the next speaker card I have is from Bradley Foster. Bradley, you're here? Here you go. You got a big voice there, and next up is Stan Betancourt. Okay.
I can affect the difference in a lot of you. I farm with Walnut and Feather River. And you're often ready to kill it. How long has your diversion tunnel been down? How many years has it been not functional? Several's not an answer.
The diversion tunnel. Is that you're asking?
The bottom of the dam, so you can let 5,000 cubic feet of water out without going through the turbine.
The
River valve, they call it. How long?
is that
Nobody knows. It's that long, nobody knows.
Give him a mic.
No, I think if you give,
The problem we're having right now is you can either release 13,000 cubic feet a second, you don't even fill the channel up, or you can release 35 or 36,000 and flood half our farm. There's no middle ground. You can't let 10,000 over your spillway, you're afraid the bottom's gonna break off and the top's gonna go with it.
so
You've worked us, you're killing it. You're drowning our orchard. When you turn the dam off overnight, you see over $100,000 damage to my property alone by pulling my banks off. My pumping stations are in the river. You make the decision to save your dam and take our property. We pay taxes. Your lack of maintenance. There's a leak in the dam. It's on media right now. 80% up there. There's a green stripe on your dam. Experts are saying it's not good. We're monitoring it. You monitored your spillway, and it's in the river. You are killing it. If you cannot come up with a flow that is 25,000 or less and maintain it, if your tunnel's been working since last year, you could have let an extra 5,000 out all through January, all through February, and you wouldn't have this backed up behind you. If your turbines were all working, same thing. More flow coming out, you're keeping it in the channel. But when you have to take it out of the channel, you're killing it. And you tell us you can't let less than 35,000 over your spillway, you'll do more damage. You're protecting your dam, you're killing us. So last night, lo and behold, 36,000, we're working around it, we've got people in the river. You decided to raise the flow to 41 or 42,000. Did you notify us? So this morning when our crews were in the river, and one of my guys driving by goes, the road's flooded. We had to get our butts out, no notification. I know you gotta get the water out of your dam, but you gotta take us into consideration. Next thing is, when this started, our trees were dormant, and you turned it off for 2 weeks to clean up your mess. And then you turned it back on. Our trees were still dormant. Then you turned it off for 3 more weeks. You couldn't let any more than 13,000 out because your diversion tunnel doesn't work. For how many years? No one's going to tell us. So now, like I said, now our trees are alive now. And you're going to turn it off here in a few days because you can't let any more out because it's probably at the bottom of your spillway, so I'm thinking properly. But now when it fills up again and you have to open it up next month, you're going to wipe us out. And we're talking my livelihood. I got 11 more years on my lease. It takes 10 years to establish a walnut orchard to full production. So what do? Retire now? Because if you kill them all, I won't make a dime. So if you cannot get that river in the channel, or if you have to bring it out of the channel, bring it out. I mean, bring it out. 80,000. Get the water out of your dam and then let us dry out. Don't do this 30,000 and hold half of us underwater for 3 weeks. Kill our entire orchard. And then, well, we're going to raise it up and see if we can get a few people in there too. I know you're not thinking that way, but that's what you're doing. So now that you've raised it again, there's probably another 250 acres underwater. And you have to raise it again next year. It's going to drain. It takes almost 2 weeks in places to get the water back out of the river where we farm. And then you've got to bring it back up again in 2 weeks. Now, we just dried out yesterday. Now you're going to bring it back up. And it's all because you can't maintain your flow. You've got a little bit or a lot. And it's because of lack of maintenance. If I ran my operation with the maintenance you have, I'd be broke because I don't have government money thrown out. So number 2 question is, have someone get a hold of me to how I get refunded for my losses, especially if we start getting into our orchard. Because of your facility, you've made the decision to slough our banks off overnight to save your dam. You're making a decision right now to save your dam, save everybody here from flood, but you're killing us. Thank you.
Do you want to respond? Do you want?
Thank
Want to introduce yourself? Let folks know who you are.
My name is Behzad Sultanzadeh. I'm the Chief Engineer for Division of Operation and Maintenance in DWR. I was a part of the incident command from February 7th through end of March. As it relates to the river valve outlets that you're talking about, the river valves in the diversion tunnel, they were operational prior to the incident. We had commissioned them for 4,000 CFS. And during this event, because of the diversion pool levels coming up, because of the sediment coming down from the gated spillway, the chamber was flooded. Once we got the levels down and the flood event went away, we started restoring the system, and it will be operational again next week.
So, did you want to follow up? Because I want to make sure we get your name, Mr. Wells, and we've.
Brad Foster.
I'm sorry, Brad Foster, and Brad Foster Farms, right?
What was this several years? And now I've been told it wasn't out of commission at all. So, that's all, that's all math, and we're getting a runaround. I mean, right here tonight, we got it. It's been down for several years, and then you just said it was operational. If it was operational, you'd have 20,000 coming out of it. You would have 20,000 coming out of it before the emergency, and you didn't. The river did not fill up before the goddamn dam filled up. You never opened it.
So, Rizad, is there any?
I see the river every day. I work on it. I live on it. I can tell you 13,000 flow, and I can show you on my pump. I can show you this month, 13,000 flow. That same pump's underwater because you sloughed all the banks into the river. I can show you where 30,000 is. I can show you where 41 is. We got to get our people out now. It's nice but cold. So don't tell me that they're working and one guy.
So the river outlet valves, you're right. They were out for
a
it.
diversion tunnel. Then that maybe I'm talking about the wrong thing.
Both the higher powerhouse and the river valves discharge to those two tunnels, and they all come out at that diversion pool. So the flows that you see, it's a combination, could be a combination of both the river valves when they're operating and the turbines when they're discharging. So is it a fact that the river valve outlet was out for a couple of years? You're absolutely right. We did go through the process of fixing it. Okay. We went through a process of fixing it. Again, we had to go through the regulatory agencies to get permissions for the repairs, and we did that. And earlier this year, we had those commissioned at 4,000 CFS.
So, Mr. Foster, in terms of following up with you, I want to make sure that someone from the department does follow up with you, because you're also talking about.
I need a refund. I mean, you might have every farmer between Oroville and Sacramento needing a refund because you're killing them, because you can't control your flows.
So let's start by when the meeting's over that we have a conversation with you about what's going on for you, okay?
And the other farmers.
Okay. Let's see, I had Stan Betancourt up next, and then after you, Mr. Betancourt, I had Ken, is it Battles? I'm sorry? Okay. So, Mr. Betancourt, did you want to come up and ask it?
No, I think everybody can hear me. Okay, first of all, Mr. Royal up there, you are not God. You do not decide who gets put underwater. You and Jerry Brown are playing God, and you are not God. That lake needs to come down. It needs to come down. There's a leak in it. The leak above the highest power plant. It's been there for years. You can look at all the old pictures, and you see the grass growing on the side of the dam. Grass doesn't grow unless you got water. You don't need to be an engineer or a big degree to know that. Okay? We're just farmers. We're simple people. When the lake level goes down, you can see the grass dies because the water's not going through. You got water. You pressurize the dam to the most that it's ever been pressurized in the history of that dam. And now, where the green patches of grass are growing, we're saying that's leaked and nobody wants to talk about it in your office? I mean, there's water coming through. Let the water out before it all comes out on us. That's my opinion.
That's just, okay. Did you want to respond, Bill? Did someone someone else want to respond to the comment about grass growing on the dam?
About the leak
And-
in the dam.
And that being related to the dam? Yeah.
That event that you're talking about has been documented since early on when the dam was built. The regulators know about it. We inspect it. When we monitor it, it is not going through the dam.
Sure, and you inspect it and you monitor it to that spillway too.
It's just like the Yukon Dam. They have the same problem.
So I really need to ask people who've asked to speak. I just want to make sure we get your comments, sir. So. Well, I think what you're hearing. Well, I understand that what you're hearing from the chief engineer is that but it doesn't, let's just hear that again, okay?
That leak, it's a natural spring that has been documented for decades. And we are measuring it on an annual basis. And
okay, let's let him answer the question, okay?
Pat, do you have anything to add on that? It is not a leak through the dam.
So I think that if you'd like some additional information specifically about that, you've got someone right there who knows what he's talking about, and I'd encourage you to talk to him. I think what you're hearing tonight is it's not a leak through the dam.
It's a really big question that a lot of people are asking. Yeah. I think if both of them could just address it more fully, because people don't understand what you mean when you say it's wet.
A spring.
It's not a spring, it's a man-made dam. It's coming down through your infiltration dam.
So, can you translate the engineer speak so that people understand what you're talking about? I think that's the problem.
Okay, thanks, Assemblymember. Is there anything else that you can offer, Azad, about this question?
This point, no.
So what would be a good way to follow up and try and clarify this for people?
Additional information, I would share it with everyone.
Okay, so we'll make a point of coming back with specific information about this particular question.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yes, sir. All right. There obviously are a couple of questions that we need to have DWR address directly about this, so thank you for raising that.
So before we go on to the next question, let's be clear about how we're going to address that question, right? Because I think there's a ton of information.
Excuse me, folks, the director's trying to speak, so if you would, thank you.
So I want to make sure that we don't leave this question the way we are, right? And so I want to make sure it's clear to this group and the future community meetings that we need to answer this question directly and provide the documentation, whether it's the description and the work we've done to validate that this is the spring and how that impacts, the dam itself, the potential risks, and understand the groundwater hydrology and the side banks of this structure so that this community and others can see for themselves the information that we have. Okay, so I want to make sure that it's not just us talking at this meeting, that we provide through our written Q&A session with regard to your question and get a specific written answer with the documentation to support the response. And I hope, and if it doesn't address your or others that are interested in this issue, that you engage the department. We have some contact ways to do this. So I'm committing to make sure that we provide you a full description of the background behind the green grass there, the homework by not just us, by those regulatory agencies and those third parties that provide you at least more information. And if you're still concerned and have a different perspective, then please engage us. I mean, I guess that's my commitment to this group, not just you, sir, but to this group, to make sure that we can, because this is an opportunity for us to hear from you and educate us on your perspective, as well as make sure you have information to be more informed, especially for those areas that you're concerned about. And so that's our commitment to you, and I want to make sure that you get your specific, because it's a good question. And I don't think we've adequately addressed that here tonight, and I want to make sure that we do that.
Okay, so, and
Excuse me, I'd like to ask you, when do you think you'll be able to maintain like a 20,000 cubic foot that doesn't flow in the river?
so I really need you to respect the,
I'm sorry, but it was a question I skipped earlier, I got upset, but we really need to know this.
so we'll put it in the queue and we'll answer that question, so thanks for being patient. No, I understand. So I have a card, and I apologize if I can't read the last name. Is Ken, is it Bettles? Or, I don't want to, and the question is how much? I'm not sure how much what.
And if someone wants to, I'm sorry? Oh, in other words, how much has it cost, has the response cost for that incident? Okay. And you're Ken. All right, thank you.
So as I understand, our response costs that were known and projected through May, which is when we expect the response period to be over, is $247 million. Much of which happened in the first number of weeks as a result of, air operations and hiring almost every concrete truck in Northern California and some other things. But so the upfront response costs are quite high, again, for that public safety mission, and then those costs drop off as we complete some of those response activities. So maybe just to anticipate maybe the next question is, how much do we think the reconstruction is going to cost? Is $275 million.
How much is it going to cost you and how much is it going to cost us?
So I think the clarifying question, which I think it's fair enough, is who's going to pay the?
Okay, so I went there. So I broke the rules there, didn't I?
That's okay.
And you fell for it.
We got to answer this.
But so to be clear,
Hey everyone, if you'd let the director answer the question, thanks.
the costs are on the back of the state water contractors. So for those 29 contractors that pay for the operation and maintenance of the state water project, now we are engaging FEMA because we do have a federal declaration now to reach over to our federal partners to see, especially for response costs and some of the recovery costs. That's a process. I hate to say it, but there's lots of paper cuts involved. Takes some time, but our goal is to maximize our recovery of those funds via the federal process. And that goes for you working for those businesses that have been impacted, those agencies working through our operational area, or those emergency managers to try to take advantage of some of the opportunities under the FEMA process, because we do have a presidential deck for not just Oroville spill, but for the historic weather conditions and the flood impacts that we have throughout California. I think I forgot exactly. I think 50 of the counties are covered as part of that federal declaration from President Trump.
Okay.
Those places, the water districts are going to come to us with money. They're not going to pay it.
Well, I need to stick with the people who asked the card. I appreciate the question is who's going to end up paying for it.
Run around answer.
I think.
People's going to pay for it.
Well, that's true. The members, the constituents of those water districts that are contractors will pay.
Right. So Robert Weiss, I have a comment card from you, and then I also have James Stone. So is Mr. Weiss here? Here you go. You want to come up to the microphone here? Did you want your card, or you know what you're? Okay, got it.
My name is Robert Weiss Dunn. I'm the owner of Northern California Guide Service, and I'm also the treasurer of the NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association. I'm here to speak on behalf of fishing guides and sportsmen. Some of my questions are suggestions or questions, however you take it, Mr. Croyle. Is DWR going to commit that the Feather River Hatchery raise an extra 2 million salmon and steelhead to mitigate fish losses due to the Oroville Dam crisis and failure? Second question, is DWR going to propose a surcharge or tax of $20 per acre foot of water sold to agriculture and municipalities to preserve and rehabilitate fish and wildlife, and to maintain the Central Valley Water Project, and earmark funds only to go to these projects? And my third question would be, is DWR going to immediately restore spawning gravel that was scoured out of the Feather River below the fish hatchery due to high flows, because the endangered spring run Chinook salmon are present now in the river looking for a place to spawn. The Bureau of Reclamation on the Sacramento River has already replenished the spawning gravel in that area due to high flow scouring.
So I want to make sure I get all your questions, but I'm not aware of any $20 tax.
That's something that I thought of, that we could generate money for fishery and wildlife and the maintenance of our projects. I'm proposing that.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. And so,
All right, so
wait, he's got
go ahead.
two more
Yeah.
questions. One of which is, I have to reach over to our recovery team. I'm not Fish and Wildlife, I'm not sure with regard to our activities on replacement of spawning beds. Part of it is we have a robust number of different strike teams to deal with the issues as a result of this spill. I mean, part of the challenge that we have is we do have high flows, and we will continue to have higher flows with this snow melt here for the next couple of weeks, maybe a little longer. And so I can't speak directly to my knowledge on the recovery of the spawning beds. All of this is all part of the recovery effort, part of the issues that are being raised, and we address those as those come up. I'm not sure where the 2 million fish came or salmon came from, because my understanding through the historic unprecedented effort by a number of people, we lost very few fish. Both steelhead and the salmon were able to be moved out of the hatchery without loss. I think at the time, at one of our press conferences, we heard between 1% or 2% of the fish at the hatchery, which was because saving those fish was because of the superhuman effort by volunteers and the Department of Fish and Wildlife staff.
Those were fish that you know of. And obviously you couldn't cover the whole river and every little spot that they died in. And then also I was under the impression that we did lose 1 million king salmon due to the salinity levels in the hatchery and transportation of our fish.
So we'll follow up on that.
And Mr. Williams, I just wanted to also follow up on what the director said, is that this is obviously the fishery, the Feather River fishery obviously is a concern to people who, for a number of reasons. And so in terms of going forward, the fishery will be a conversation. And Jeannie, if you have more to offer about that, please do. Are you on? Good. Okay. There we go.
I was just going to comment that as part of recovery, we're going to be working with our partners at Fish and Wildlife and addressing fishery issues as part of the recovery effort. I'm Jeannie Cuddle.
And?
I'm leading the recovery effort.
Thank you.
I'd like to volunteer my time. I have 45 years experience of studying our rivers, the Sacramento and Feather River, to give recommendations also to our government agencies. You know, we need a bipartisan private group of individuals that do have a lot of knowledge of this river system and to help our agencies that are supposed to be restoring our fisheries and preserving them.
I think that offer is not something I can accept because I'm not DVR, but I'm confident that that offer is going to be accepted for you and other people who care about the fishery. So we need to follow up with you after the meeting and get your details.
Thank you.
So did that, as best we could, answer your questions? Mr.
Yes, and I'd like to also mention that Mr. Croyle, he's been handed a hot potato when it comes to this. He hasn't been in office for very long, so give him a chance. He's trying to work this through, okay?
Thank you.
So the next card I had was from James Stone, and then after Mr. Stone, I had it looks like there's a I'm trying to understand what this is. Is this a congregation? Is there a Viney?
Let's go on to our speaker in there.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. My name is James Stone. I am the owner-operator of Elite Sportsman Guide Service. I'm also the president of NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association, representing thousands of members, as well as representing thousands of users of our lower Feather River waterways. One of the major concerns that I want to talk to you tonight, I'm also a family of an evacuees from this situation, so my heart is out with each and every one of you tonight, and I appreciate everyone being here, because without us being here, our government is never going to hear our true voice. And we have some wonderful local legislators that I've been working with locally recently in regards to certain issues, and every one issue is important. So what I really want to talk to you tonight about is something that has been a major concern for many, many years, decades actually, and that has to do with the downstream effects of our dam and DWR's releases of water. We have major, major problems. It has been brought to your attention at the department multiple years in a row, maybe not you directly as the acting director, but in the past. I have board of directors here in the audience that have been fighting for cleanup of our lower river system. Actually, in 2006, 2007, the Sutter County Board of Supervisors proposed a Lower Feather River Corridor project, which was to dredge or do silt management cleanup of our lower river. What happens, folks, for those of you that don't know, is when DWR raises flows and drops flows, what ends up happening is it causes bank erosion. And this gentleman that's a tree farmer right here, and others that are tree farmers in here, I'm watching your trees daily fall into the river. Daily. I dodged 14 walnut trees today when I was on the river working. It is a hazard for our community and for the users of our waterway, not only just an inconvenience and a huge financial loss to our farmers. So my suggestion is, once and for all, we need to clean up the Feather River. From Gridley down is the main problem. You have silt issues that are building sandbanks that are 2 to 20 feet tall in certain areas. When we had our drought flows a few years ago, we were not even able to navigate our own rivers via boat. We were walking across the river knee deep. Now, what happens, for those of you that don't know with water management, what ends up happening, folks, is the water is staying inside the riverbanks. And as they go, pulse flows up, down, and like this gentleman tonight, when I showed up at the ramp this morning and it was completely flooded out and they locked me out of Live Oak Ramp. I was the only one launched there this morning and they locked me out. I was trapped in a flooded parking lot with my clients this morning. Okay? Trapped. And the camp host, we had to wake him up to let us get out. Now, what I want to talk to you about is the major issue that we've been having for years is that bank erosion is falling in, the trees are falling in, and that sediment is staying inside the riverbanks. Whereas pre-dam, that silt would outflow outside the riverbanks and would stay outside the riverbanks. Now you are raising our river bottoms and lowering our flows in the summertime, and we do not have a safe river for our citizens. The biggest problem that you guys did was when you had the flows at 50,000 and shut them down to zero. The banks were held in with pressure, and when you dropped it to zero to inspect your spillway, everything collapsed instantly. We were on the water. My association and my membership work on the river every day, and we have the most knowledge and the most hours logged on our rivers and can tell you what's happening. Our Assemblyman Gallagher and Senator Nielsen sent people with me last week to observe some of these things, and they were astonished on the damage. They will be coming back out with me again very soon once you lower your flows, so they can see that it's even worse than they thought. I am asking you, once and for all, forget the environmental fees, the environmental permits, and all of the red tape, and clean up our Feather River once and for all to the mouth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a response?
Yeah, thank you for his comment. I think we have some work to do.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to do before we get to the next comment is let you know that just as a first step, I've been given this URL. If you want to file a claim against the state, with the state, this is the URL. Up here, we'll make sure we get it to you.
This isn't a state agency.
Excuse me.
Water contractors. They're not a state
I'm, here's what the first step that I can do is to give you the URL for Department of General Services, dgs.ca.gov, enter claims. Sir?
It doesn't.
Sir, I'm providing this information as a first step.
Providing bad information. DWR is not a state agency. They're the managing partner for the state water contractors. Their department is paid for by the state water contractors. If you want to file claims, you're going to have to file with state water contractors.
So if it turns out that I don't have correct information, I apologize to everyone. This is a first step, and if there needs to be correct information, we'll get correct information to people who need to file claims with the state.
Don't give out this bogus stuff.
I'm giving up information that's been given to me.
You've been lied to.
Oh.
Well, I hope I don't lie to you ever, but we are a state agency.
No, you're not.
Okay, well, we're going to disagree. So I don't work for the contractors. I have a contract with them that pays for the state water project, but I work for the governor, Governor Brown, through the Secretary of Natural Resources. So we are a state agency. Okay.
All right. So the next question, the comment I have, or questions are from Kenneth Viney. Did you want me to ask these questions? Did you want to come up, sir? You know your questions? I've got your card here. Okay. There's a microphone right over there.
My name is Ken Viney. I own a small consultancy group. We do project planning. I'm a semi-retired consultant that worked on dams as a contractor, bonded contractor for over 20 years. And I want to congratulate you, Bill, and your team for putting this together today to give these folks a chance to talk about the issues that really concerns them. I've got a question for you. I had some legal questions I was going to answer, but your team is right on top of this and answered those legal questions. My question to you now is, the department came out early on and asked for public comment. And you said through various media that you were going to look at all options were on the table. So we put a couple hundred hours together, made 3 trips to the dam, had a look at it, and decided that those 2 spillways could be incorporated into 1 spillway if you stayed away from that huge gorge. And we gave those plans to your folks and got absolutely no feedback whatsoever. After several conversations with your chief engineer, Mr. Craddock, we were a bit disappointed, so we sent in our documents to FERC and filed them with FERC. And we'd like to know, are you still looking at what we proposed as an alternate, or is that gone by the way? And the second question is, I don't believe the contract documents that you gave to Kiewit and the other contractors actually addresses, like you've discussed, the erosion from if it overtops the emergency spillway. You've got some work that you're going to do there, but it doesn't address the issue of all the water that would come over that spillway and go down that side hill. It only addresses maybe the top 1/4 of the 1,500 feet. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the spillway, the graphic that we have is I'm not sure exactly how many feet down the slope, but it's, maybe Jeannie, you can answer that question.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Again, I'm Jeannie Cuddle, working on recovery. I believe you mentioned you'd spoken to Mr. Craddock, and I've read your report that you posted to FERC, and we have looked at various alternatives in conjunction with Division of Safety of Dams, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and our Board of Consultants. And so we did a process where we looked at the alternatives that we felt were the most achievable to get done in this season and the most robust solution. So we've looked at a lot of different alternatives, and as you know, we've proceeded with the ones that we have discussed in the back, and that contract is moving forward. So we have seen your comments. We appreciate that work.
You haven't answered the question, though. So why don't you incorporate the two spillways so they're both take the water right down to the Thermalito Channel? The issue that I'm dealing with is that you still have a safety issue with the runoff if you should overtop the emergency spillway. And the fact that that Kiewit's contract states that all they have to do is provide in the upper spillway an area that can discharge 100,000 cubic feet per second. If you have the same conditions next winter that you got this winter, all right, and you overtop the emergency spillway, that water is going to clean off that hillside again, and you're going to have the same erosion problem that you had last year. Albeit, it may not destroy the work that you're doing under the Kiewit contract. It might not destroy the lip of the emergency spillway and cause an evacuation, but you're still going to have huge runoff and huge erosion from that emergency spillway because you haven't addressed that issue. And the question is, why don't you merge the two spillways together so the job is done once? I want to comment that as a contractor, I know that Kiewit has between 15 and 20% in their bid for mobilization. That comes to $45 to $55 million. They could be spent on increasing the size of that spillway that you're working on now to take both streams of water, the water from the runoff from the spillway, the controlled spillway, plus any runoff that would come off the emergency spillway.
So let me address the one part of your question. The capacity that we're seeking to get out of the gated spillway by the end of the season is 260,000, right, Ted? 270,000, and there's additional 30,000 capacity coming over the emergency spillway, which, as Bill mentioned, we are not intending to use, but we will have that capacity if necessary.
So it's going to be fixed by November 1st.
The cutoff wall is nowhere near 1,500 feet downstream of the emergency spillway, according to that drawing. The bedrock in this area is very shallow, but it drops off about 400 feet down the hill. So that cutoff wall has to be no more than 300 or 400 feet downstream from the emergency spillway. Is that correct?
That is correct. The cutoff wall is somewhere between 200 and 300 feet downstream of the emergency spillway.
So what happens? So the same thing is going to happen next year, and probably will happen because you've got a limited amount of discharge. You're telling me 270,000 cubic feet per second. Well, if you had that much discharge, and these gentlemen are getting concerned about 30,000 cubic feet per second, there's something, I'm missing something here. If 30,000 cubic feet per second is flooding them out, what's 270,000 cubic feet per second going to do to them?
So again, the most capacity that the spillway has ever seen was about 160,000, is that correct? And so the intent is not to go to 260, but that would be the capacity that gated spillway would be able to see based on the current design.
Mr. Viney, I wonder, we've given you a long time up here, so I wonder if we can continue the technical conversation, because obviously you know a lot.
I don't obviously know enough because my question is not answered. How are you going to control the water that gets over that cutoff wall? How are you going to control that water? You're going to have erosion into the Feather River or into the Thermoledo Channel, no different than happened this last year. In fact, the incidents, if you got an ability to send out 270,000 cubic feet per second, how come the contract with Kiewit says they only have to prepare for 100,000 cubic feet per second in their contract for the 1st of November?
No, so this is the emergency spillway. The 270,000 is along the gated spillway, and the emergency spillway would be rated and designed to pass 30,000.
Well, what is it?
So
is it 30,000 or 270,000?
30,000 over the emergency spillway, 270 on the gated spillway.
But the contract with Kiewit says they're working on that top area on the controlled gated spillway. They have to allow for 100,000 cubic per second, right?
270.
In the contract?
Yes.
So maybe we can follow up with the details of that after the meeting and make sure you've got the facts that you're looking for. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Absolutely. All right, so the next card I have is from John Bill. Is Mr. Bill here? Okay, I'll read it, and I'll take this one too. Okay, so how and where do the growers who farm inside the levee seek some financial relief from losses due to this situation? So the information that I was given as a first step is up on that flip chart. That's a first step. Obviously, we want to make sure you get pointed in the right direction. So if we need to follow up with you, let's do that. Okay, that's the first step. Well, I need to answer people's questions in the order they've given them to me. So I've got Tom Sanford. Do you want your card, or are you?
Sure, that's all right.
Okay. And next up is, let's see, I've got Barbara Johnson is up next.
My concern has to do with kind of the reality of the situation. We've talked a lot about catastrophic flows of water and the like, but we're here tonight not because of the flows, because the design of the dam, if the gated spillway had done what it was designed to do, we wouldn't be here tonight and we would have been in just fine shape. The news media has reported that in the past there have been flaws and repairs required on the gated spillway, and that repairs were made, and that subsequently the Bureau of Dam Safety conducted their inspections, but over the last 3 years, nobody actually went out on the spillway to inspect them. And when people were questioned about that, this response was, well, you can't have people out there when you got water behind the dam, and that was the explanation, that they could somehow inspect these spillways from afar. I think I just read that the governor just did away with the drought. And so we've had quite some period of time that anybody and everybody could have walked out in that spillway without being in some danger. I don't understand how in the world dam safety could inspect that spillway without being on it. And the second part of the question is, are the people that made those decisions to pass off on inspection without going in there, are they still employed by the state of California?
So, Director, before you answer, I really would like to ask everyone if you could keep the conversations down, because it's very difficult to hear the questions as well as the answers. So that's just a courtesy for people who have been waiting to ask their questions. Director.
So honestly, I don't know who conducted those inspections, so I don't know the names. I can't answer whether they still work for the department. And again, there's other agencies that are charged with inspecting the dam, being FERC and our independent panel. And so I can't speak to that. I'm not sure if any of our panel members can as well.
Can I get clarification that within DWR, you have the Bureau of Dam Safety? And they have the principal responsibility. I know from a small dam above Lake Oroville, they've been all over us like a cheap suit. So I'm just wondering how it is that FERC has some sort of responsibility somehow superior to the primary inspection responsibility of Bureau of Dam Safety.
Yeah, they don't have, in my opinion, they don't have superior position. We actually have our own Department of Water Resources, Division of O&M, that are charged with our dam safety program within the operations. Then there's the regulatory part, the Division of Safety of Dams, which is a regulatory entity. So they do their own independent inspections. And then there's FERC. Again, that's the federal, but they're not higher or lower than the Division of Safety. It's an independent regulatory.
Did your people go out and physically inspect the dam, the spillway?
I'm not specific. I'm not aware of the specific dates that we did or didn't. No, Jeannie, if you can respond to that.
Okay. Are you on?
Yes, not.
Here, you can use
Did you go out?
So I can't give the specific dates, but I have personally been on some of those inspections in past years. Absolutely, people are physically there on the inspection in concert with the Division of Operations and Maintenance, who is essentially the dam owner within our department organization, the Division of Safety of Dams, which is also within the department and is a regulatory entity, independent, but under Mr. Croyle's leadership as well as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and then periodically, at least every 5 years, is an independent board that it also inspects that dam, physically inspects it on the dam.
Within
goes
the last
into
3
the dam.
years, you walk the dam.
Yes. The dam, the spillway, the plant, all aspects of the dam, the up and down the groin, interior, all of it.
All right, so Barbara Johnson, I think I have a card from you. You coming up? And then okay.
First, I want to say that I live in Zone 1, which you know where that is. It is right in downtown Oroville. So my concerns may be a little bit different than some of the others. Regarding the closure of the spillway again, well, first of all, let me say that a lot of this talk about the new spillway and all this stuff is just miles down the road from anything that is relevant to me wanting to just get through this runoff safely. You know, we have got 2 months before I'm going to feel that there's actually some safety, you know, because I've heard you say that the dam is safe, but the spillway is having problems. But there's a lot of compromises in the spillway, in the emergency spillway, at the Hyatt power plant. So that all compromises the dam. There's erosion in the rocks. Everything, I believe that there is much risk mitigation that is being done. But I'm kind of in agreement with that gentleman about closing the gates, because I saw how fast the feet climbed. I've seen that, you know, dam go, you know, in 7 days, 12 feet in height. And that's on good days, you know. So I have I know you said you did modeling on the runoff. You understand and you know the storage. We have 9 dams up there ahead of us. So my concern, honestly, is for those risks, you know, per se, like you talked about before, Mother Nature. You know, what if we have 5 days of heat wave of over 100-degree heat that is just sending that snow melt down faster than what was in the models? That's my concern. With him, I understand, because I want to see that. I don't want to get to that 860, 865 stuff again. because I know how fast it can go from 865 to 880, you know? And so it seems like there's just a lot of tunnel vision, and all of it I really do understand, but a lot of tunnel vision. We need to get this new spillway in. It needs to come in by March 1st. And we're going to blast the mountain, you know, on, you know, the little bit of mountain that's in between the spillway and the dam wall, and all this other stuff, you know, so that that new spillway is in and operable, which, by the way, the 270 CFM she's talking about, the original dam spillway was supposed to be spec'd for 277 CFMs. It only hit 100, you know, and it collapsed. So, you know, and that wasn't due to the spillway of what it was spec'd for, but of course we'll probably never see 270 CFMs go over the spillway. You know, 100, but I'm just, anyway, I don't even want to get into that. So I am in a situation in downtown that, you know, at worst, there could be a full breach, and I wouldn't even have time to get into my car. You know, at best, I can probably expect 5 or 10 feet coming over that emergency spillway at some point with this runoff, and downtown being flooded with 1 to 3 feet of water. Because I don't see, with all the ways that the Hyatt plant, the main spillway, everything is compromised, that can be avoided unless it is just the most perfect runoff that we have. I mean, that your models are just giving you the most perfect, ideal settings that we've ever seen. That's my first, okay? So I really, for myself, living right there in Zone 1, I have to make a decision on whether I am even going to stay this summer for that runoff or go. That's how serious it is for where I live. Because unlike Gridley or some other places, I can't get in my car and go if that full breaches. If it partial breaches, yeah. You know, but that's an unknown. And those are the unknowns you're dealing with too. You know, and as far as what Mother Nature does and heat waves and how fast that snow really, I mean, there's 12 to 14 feet of snow minimally for 200 miles up on top of there. And we're not in the mid because it's hardly even started melting yet. So I'll stop there. The other thing that I have an issue with is when I read in the newspaper, and this is for a lot of the newspaper folks here, when I read in the newspapers and there's all of this conversation about cost of this dam, you know, I have an issue with that. This watershed project brings in more state revenue between everybody turning on their faucet, the water we sell in bottles, that fish hatchery, fishing licenses, boating licenses. There are millions, billions of dollars from this watershed project made for this state. And I would like to see a transparency of revenue. I want to see exactly what's collected for this watershed project. And that's everything from the orchards, from the food that goes out, because this whole idea of what this dam is costing, this $277 million, when I just picked up the paper today and read where there was a congressman who recently, through an SB 8 or something, is now, starting July 1st, the state governor is going to award $279.5 million for 100,000 illegal, alien, undocumented children to have health care. That is less than your contract. You know, that is less than your contract per year. They're going to award it per year.
So
this dam needs at least a commitment of $277 million a year. That just, like I said, I don't want to hear a thing about what it costs to get this watershed project back. It had a design, and that design was left.
A lot more than 3 minutes. I understand it's important to you.
You never said anything about 3 minutes, by the way.
Well,
okay?
I did.
You have not said it except to anyone but me. All right. Well, I'm sorry if I missed it.
That's all right.
Speak, please. I want to hear about the dam.
All right, so
I have a question that has to do with the parking structure that was built a few years back. Let's see, was there's water running over it and making things worse on the emergency spillway? So I guess the question is, was there a relationship between the parking structure up there and any of the issues with the emergency spillway? Jeannie?
The answer is no. There was no additional cause, anything for that.
No.
Well, it's so much higher, you can almost park, like a parking lot right there on the emergency spillway. When they first built it, doesn't that cause the water to push up even higher, to come over the spillway at a higher volume?
No.
I think it's no.
Yeah,
From the engineer.
So-
All right, moving on.
Wait.
Bill, do you want to explain that, Bill?
So here, now this is a little tough because we have big red line through here. So again, just to orient, I'm trying because it's actually a pretty interesting question. I think it's important for a couple different reasons. So here's the gated structure. Here's what we call the spillway, the gated spillway. The big hole in it. Here's the emergency spillway. So this is 1,700 feet long. About half of this is made up of blocks. So those are engineered weir structures that take water, and so those are anywhere from about 40 feet high to 80 feet high as you get down into the deeper part of the canyon. From this point, it goes almost to the surface, which is actually, there's a 2-foot high weir, basically a line of concrete, looks like a narrow sidewalk almost, that goes all the way to the end over by the restrooms. Okay, behind that, on the lake side of that, is a parking lot and a beautiful marina, launching facility, etc. So that whole structure is part of the emergency spillway.
Yeah, but the parking lot never was there, and they built it, probably 15 years ago.
Right.
And it seems that, and they built up that whole area higher when they put that parking lot. This is what we've done it for years. And so that was my concern when they first put the parking lot in there. And I don't know, I could be mistaken, I had heard that the water had gone around the north side or west side or whatever it is.
Well, the water, and we have some pictures online of when the water was going over that show the water going over the entire 1,700 feet of weir of the same depth. It's amazing when they built it how flat it is all the way across. So there was water flowing over here, the same amount of water flowing here as it was over here. Okay, there's no difference in the height of the water across that weir, and that's where these little channels ended up in here and was part of our emergency response with the helicopters. So because of the channels that in this case eroded here, in case that we had to stop using the spillway, they went in with the helicopters and dropped super sacks, because you can no longer drive here. So they put all the sacks that are loaded full of rock in these channels so that if we had to take more water over the top of that, you would prevent additional erosion. So the same, it's kind of, the parking lot is higher, but this weir set the same amount of water coming across for the full 1,700 feet. So the maximum depth on that, at the peak of the runoff, was 1.7 feet. When the erosion was identified as potentially causing a threat to the structure is when we had the conversation about what we could and couldn't do with regard to increasing more water here, and ultimately call for the evacuation. Because of this, we wanted to make sure that we don't lose that structure and have more water discharging other. Now, in the end, it didn't fail. The erosion, which was unanticipated, did threaten this infrastructure. And that's the graphic that we have, and that's the erosion that we're going to address to make sure that never happens again, even though we never want to use that structure again.
So, okay, so did you want to show a graphic there, Bill? Okay. Aaron.
Hi. I may have made a typo or written typo on this, or my handwriting might just be bad, but if you need this link, specifically these directions will work, but if you need this link, find me. I will text it to you or email it to you. I will get it to you. Thank you.
That's Aaron. Okay. Phil Hughes. Yes. Do you want me to read the? No. You got it? Okay. Well, I'll just let you use that microphone.
Thank you. Mr. Croyle, appreciate your attendance and the rest of you folks from DWR. Our family farms along the Feather River. We've got about approximately 5 miles of river frontage, born and raised here in Gridley. I can remember when Gridley was, or Feather River was a beautiful tree-lined channel. Obviously, post-dam, the whole situation has changed, and I'm not against dams. Dams have a tremendous benefit for a lot of different reasons. But we, inside the floodplain, have absolutely gotten the devil knocked out of us. I've got a couple of questions to address that. We spent a lot of money back in the 80s addressing these avulsion problems that we were facing.
Could I just interrupt you for a second? We're really getting a lot of other conversation. It's really hard to hear the questions that we're getting, so I really do want to ask you to have a bit of courtesy. If you need to have a conversation, want to step outside, that would be courteous, because we really need to hear this conversation.
But regarding the avulsion that we faced, we contacted DWR for help in terms of being able to mitigate our avulted areas. And lo and behold, we spent about $40,000 in the process of doing that in the 80s. And we found out from the Freedom of Information Act that DWR had started paying flowage rights to people downstream, but yet they decided to stop those flowage rights and litigate it with cheaper dollars down the road. And that was a pretty nauseating thing. Probably you folks have no history with DWR. This goes back a long time. And you're just following the rope, so to speak, chain of employment. But that, to me, was a very arrogant thing, and that's the way we found responses from DWR. I hate to say it, filing claims with DWR, good luck. But this is all caused by what's caused the clear water discharge theory. Anytime you have a dam, 80% of the accretants remain behind the dam. So you only got 20% flowing over the dam, and when you have avulsion downstream, those 80% of the accretants remain behind the dam, and you don't have the accretants flowing downstream to fill up your avulted areas. And that's just phenomenal of clear water discharge. And consequently, the spawning beds, I can remember salmon spawning way up here. That no longer exists. The spawning beds have all moved downstream. And it's a beautiful, non-beautiful, eroded channel. I mean, it's terrible. But DWR just says, good luck. You're within the floodplain. That's the way it goes. And the gentleman was talking about his trees. This raised 5,000 or 6,000 CSFs overnight. That suddenly flooded about 400 acres of our property we were working in it. And we've got a lot at stake there, but you know, that's Mother Nature, and do I like it? Heck no, I don't like it. But I've got a second question. There was an article in Chico Enterprise when the dam was constructed. This gentleman that was a UC engineer commented on what he saw to be flaws in the people that had constructed that dam. I'm sure you've probably seen those reports. They were pretty scary to me. When you looked at those avulted cement slabs, I saw no rebar in between them. And he went on to say that the shoddy construction that went into that spillway, I'm sure you folks have probably seen that, but that's the extent of what I had to say. But I hate to say it, but to get compensated on how to DWR, good luck.
All right, I have 13 more speaker cards. Hang in there. So Ryan Fillmore, I'm sorry.
Any comment on that article that
Did you want to comment on the newspaper article that you
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with the specific article, the UC professor, we just had Professor Bray just.
It was in Chico Enterprises where I read it. It was the front page article on flaws that he found in the construction of that dam once the avulsion of the dam itself broke apart.
Well, first of all, I'm not familiar with the specific article that you're bringing up. However, some of the issues that have been quite a bit of discussion online and social media, there is rebar in the facility. The rebar is holding actually the panels that are still in the upper chute together on the upper chute. The thickness of the concrete as we go out and drill that in preparation for reconstruction is thicker in many areas than actually is designed for in the construction specs and the as-built.
Yeah, that was one of the comments he made. The thickness was, I think, per spec 15 inches, and he found areas that were only less than a foot deep, where pipes had to run crossways for the drainage areas. But anyway, I was pretty, you know, and talk is talk. I understand that. We're in business. We've been in business for a long time. But things like that, it makes you wonder. But when I saw slabs of concrete up in the air, there was no rebar sticking out of those at all. I think there were some problems there.
Thank you very much to all the legislators who are here, the representatives of different governments. At the risk of sounding like a politician, I do appreciate everybody's time coming out and answering questions from a sometimes friendly, sometimes less friendly audience. Sorry about that. I'll speak up into the microphone. My question is related to not specifically the dam itself, but the downstream effect. You know, we're talking about numbers like 30,000 CFS or 12,000 CFS or 270,000 CFS. I live here in Gridley. Our family's been here for over 100 years. And I can remember a time when, well, I can't remember a time, but my family can remember a time when there was no dam at all. And we got inundated on a regular basis here in Gridley and down in Marysville. But all of the dam work that keeps the dam itself from failing doesn't matter so much for us here in Gridley if we're at this 270,000 CFS rate, because the current levee structure, as Senator Nielsen was referring to, isn't capable of handling that. So my question to you is, what is the target level of outflow, maximum outflow, before we switch from a warning about high water level to an emergency evacuation type scenario that we're trying to reach for the downstream all the way down to the bay? And how are we going to go about that in terms of what kind of time frame we're?
That's a good question. So our levee systems, depending on where you are, in this reach, it's about 150, 160,000 CFS. And that's why we don't ever plan on going over 150, 160,000 CFS. That's critical to stay within those levee structures. And so the spillway and the emergency spillway as a whole are designed to take 750,000 CFS. And when you think about how much water that is compared to 150, what that kind of an event is, that's kind of what, there's different words for it, but I call it the mother of nature, the mother of all storms, which means the entire Central Valley looks different. The communities on the valley floor will be different. Now, that's what it's designed to do. That design is designed to keep those dam structures and spillways in place. That design also means there's going to be some loss of trees and erosion. To be clear. So the emergency spillway is there for an emergency. It's not designed for the kind of an event we had, right? So the spillway itself worked. The erosion is a problem, and the evacuation was pulled because we saw that as a threat to the structure itself. Now, fortunately, in the middle of all this, we were able to take action to minimize that threat and reduce it to the point where the emergency spillway held. It did not fail. We had to increase water over the top of the gated spillway, which caused more degradation on the concrete slab. But we did that for a short period of time so we could bring that water and quit spilling over the emergency spillway. So the 270 is a design criteria that the regulatory agencies require that we build this to. So knowing that if you have to take that much water down through that spillway, you're going over the top of the levees. So again, I think your question is, when do we know?
Well, no, actually my question is more along the lines, you said 150, 160,000. We know that different areas of the levee are stronger and weaker, and we've seen evidence of that in past evacuation events. My question is that 150,000 CFS or 160,000 level the target, or is there a higher target, and what's the timeline for reaching it?
So when we reach those levels, and I have my flood ops center chief over here, and so whenever we start bringing up in the flood system, the Flood Operations Center in Sacramento coordinates with all the local emergency managers and the levee districts to make sure they know what the forecasts are, what the expected releases are from all of the reservoirs, not just Oroville that's in play here. Fortunately, within this watershed, we coordinate all reservoir releases so that it's all timed so that we understand the impact on the different parts of the system throughout the area. Occasionally, we're going to have big events like we had in February, which is that 191,000 CFS. You know, the last time we saw inflows, I think in the Res 97, I understand, was 350,000 CFS, you know, which is, again, unprecedented. But we took the reservoir up to the top, not at 901 or above, but it was up at 900.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, they're pushing 150,000, 160,000 down through the system. So at that point, the levees are all being patrolled. The emergency managers and levee districts are all communicating to make sure they understand the dynamics. Are things holding? Is there concerns? I think this year we had a number of flood fights to stabilize some areas that were moving around downstream from here to make sure that those levees held with not, you know, big flows with 110,000 CFS coming in. So the key is when do they call for an evacuation? You know, those triggers are going to be if the levees, even at 150, even at 100, if they start moving around and threaten failure, that's the conversation we have with the emergency managers.
I don't need the microphone, but I'll stand up here anyway. I want to thank the Honorable Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Gallagher for helping work with DWR to arrange this, Mr. Coyle for being here. I have several things. I actually want to follow up on Stan Betancourt's question about the water flow through the dam. We know the dam was designed. It has a clay core. You did have inflow galleries in there with water flow measurements. The information that we've been given is that those inflow galleries have been seeing more and more water coming through the core of the dam. So we look forward to your reports coming out with the documentation to see whether those reports are true or not true, because we got physical evidence on the outside of the dam as well as reports of more inflow coming through the dam. So we're concerned not only about the spillway, but actually the condition of the dam. So we look forward to those reports. Looking at your design, I listened to your design engineers talk about this emergency spillway, talking about the current contract you have with Peter Kiewit, talking about bringing this up to where it's going to design for 30,000 CFS going over the emergency spillway. You just confirmed what the dam was designed with. 750,000 CFS was supposed to be between the main spillway, the control structure, and the spillway and the emergency spillway. In 1997, when we were evacuated, we did have a peak of 750,000 CFS coming into Oroville. We were told to evacuate because we were expecting 400,000 uncontrolled over the emergency spillway. You talk about 30,000. You might think that's all you're going to get. It's uncontrolled. If the lakes kept coming up, it didn't matter how much you released. When you're up at that level, you cannot control it. It's an uncontrolled spillway. I'm concerned if your design is only designed to handle 30,000 before it starts eroding and failing. You're using roller compacted concrete. It's a good substance. Yes, we build dams out of it, but roller compacted concrete in this setup, if we start getting flows above 30,000, we start getting 100, 200, 300,000, we have hydrologic events in our watershed that show that, that's going to fail. I am an engineer. That's going to fail. I'm concerned about that. We've talked about, I heard from our senators, assemblymen, open and transparent. We want the truth, trust, open dialogue. Why haven't the plans, the detailed plans of this fix been released? You've hidden behind FERC and a false straw man of national security under the Federal Energy Regulation Commission, and yet Oroville Dam, compared to Folsom, is not as high a risk in the energy circuits and the federal as Oroville is. It is the main backup dam, Folsom that is, if the power grid goes down in California. Yet all the repairs we did with the Folsom Dam modifications were 100% public. All the drawings are out there. All the contracts are out there. They happen to be run by the Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation, federal agencies that are concerned with federal security. Are you going to release every detail of the plans and the investigations and not hide behind national security, which seems to be a false straw man for Oroville? I'll pause there to hear that answer, but I have some follow-up questions.
No.
You're not going to release them?
No, there is certain information that we deem confidential that we're not going to release. And the reason why is, this is, in our opinion, I'm the dam owner, I being the Department of Water Resources, are charged with protecting your life and property. And I'm not going to risk sharing that information that gives somebody an idea what our weakest link is in this dam structure, because it puts your lives at risk. And I understand what you're saying.
I've got Folsom Dam sitting down there that has a evacuation of a lot more than here. It is a higher level with this infrastructure being monitored by FERC. They released everything, happens to be the feds. What is the state trying to hide? You're hiding behind that statement. I hear the statement, I'm just going to tell you, and I appreciate you saying it. I don't believe it. We need open and transparent of what's going on here. We don't have enough information to design. What is coming through the hill? Why did that water come underneath the main spillway, causing the uplift force along with the cavitation to cause that to fail? Are there grout curtains going to be put on the upstream side, i.e. lake side of the dam, as well as through the emergency spillway to stop the water from flowing through the infrastructure? Don't know. I haven't been able to see your designs. You know, we got a lot of concerns, Mr. Croyle. I hope that our senators and congressmen from the U.S., our U.S. senators and congressmen, force the state to make that stuff public. We have a right to know, because it's not going to get in the hands of the terrorists. It's not something the terrorists are going to be exploiting. You are hiding something. And if you say you're not hiding something, then why isn't it full, open, and transparent?
Like I say, I'm sharing that information with the sheriff. I've shared that information with some of our legislators. We're going to share as much information we can, but there is some information that I'm not willing to share. I mean, I think we're going to have a lot of information for you to talk about with regard to what happened. The forensics information will be made public, so we all know what happened, and we know how we're going to mitigate once we better understand what happened.
Well, we know what happened, but we want to make sure it doesn't happen again. We want to make sure that your design fix, not only on the temporary fix, but the permanent fix is actually going to hold up. I happen to know that from the studies you're doing out there right now, that the rock, I mean, granted this is just a diagram, but the bedrock that the emergency spillway is currently built on and everything downstream of it, yes, bedrock, but it is highly eroded, highly fractured, and you have to go anywhere from 35 to 65 feet down before you hit competent rock. Are you going to be going down that far to build this repair back up, or are we just going to put a Band-Aid on it and call it good?
So, Mr. Martin, I know you've got a lot of questions. You obviously know a lot as well. So we're over 3 minutes. I have other people who would like to speak.
Understood. There's other meetings.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
There will be other meetings. Okay, I have Braden Pisani, you're coming up, and then after Braden, I have Richard Myers.
How's it going? Just got 2 quick questions. Constituent that couldn't be here tonight. The first one is the plan to completely replace the upper chute and clear out the weathered rock beneath before November 1st? And they want to know if that's the plan for the flood control spillway.
Jeannie?
Ask that question again.
Yeah, sorry. It's do you want to completely replace the upper chute and clear out the weathered rock beneath it before November 1st, or is that going to come in later repairs?
Our intent right now with the upper chute is, in the contract as it went out, we were looking at full replacement. And as we mentioned, we're doing some exploration now, and we found areas that are much thicker than were anticipated based on the design and then the as-built drawings. So we're going to do additional exploration and then direct the contractor to replace the areas that are the most vulnerable, and in that time frame before November 1st, so that that upper chute is as competent as we can possibly get it to make sure we can pass the design flows.
Thank you. And then the second question is, how's the aggregate concrete mix working, and will it be sufficient under the rolled compacted concrete structure? So I guess what they're asking is, what you put in there already, does that have to come out, or is that going to be sufficient to be built on top of?
Specifically on the emergency spillway, I believe we'll be removing a lot of what was there. It was placed really quickly under an emergency situation. The roller compacted concrete then would be placed per standard specifications, meaning that we're going to have strength mixed designs, and we'll make sure that we get the quality of the RCC, the roller compacted concrete, and also all the structural concrete to meet the design standards that have been approved by DSOD and FERC and that we believe is necessary to make it a competent structure.
Thank you. Okay, Richard Myers. Here you go. Do you want your card? I've got it here, or you?
Okay, please. Thank you.
And next up is Ryan Shore.
I've been in Oroville on the river for the last 40 years, and I didn't know that there were shortcuts taken on the building of the dam, and I didn't know that it wasn't being maintained properly, but I did know there was a problem. And so for 40 years, I've watched the amount of water coming into that lake and the amount of water that you were releasing into the river. And not much has been said about what I see as the real problem here. The gentleman who came up and talked about the Marysville Dam or Marysville Lake, I never heard about that, but he's got the point that we need to be concerned about, and that is there's not enough reserve being held back in that lake for the water that's coming in. You just talked about how much water could come into that lake. That's the first time I've heard that since this incident occurred. How much water comes into the Oroville Lake? What's the maximum that comes in? Anybody know? How much? 3.5? Was that acre feet? Okay, I don't know acre feet, but I know cubic feet per second. 350,000?
I think our max inflow ever recorded is 350,000 in 1997.
Have you heard that? 350,000 cubic feet per second can come into that lake. It's not an estimate of what can come in. That's a historical record of what can come in. This year was a record year of rainfall in the watershed. Okay. Do we think there may be 350,000 cubic feet coming into this lake yet? And that, that happened in 97. Do you know that lake was 1 foot from going over the emergency spillway? And if it went over the emergency spillway then, how much would have gone over the emergency spillway? There was 160,000 going over the main spillway, correct? How much was going over the main spillway?
65, I think, at the time.
So are we talking about 1997?
97, yes.
97. I don't know 97.
I think it was 160.
I think it was maybe 150 plus maybe releases from the powerhouse. So somebody said 160, and that's what I remember. If 160 was going over the main spillway, and we were 1 foot away from going over the emergency spillway, how much would have gone over the emergency spillway? 160 subtracted from how much? 350. That's a lot of water going over that emergency spillway. Can you imagine? What happened here was nothing compared to what have happened in 97, and nobody said one word about this. None of the reporters have said anything about this. The problem is there's not enough reserve being held in that lake to store the water that's coming in. And this thing about the Oroville Lake, your boss, you need to have a talk with your boss for us. You need to tell him that he needs to build some dams in California. We've got plenty of water, and it needs to be stored. And that's not happening. And there was money set aside to do that, and still hasn't been done. So the issue is, the danger. This gentleman right here, you want to know the danger? You want to know when the danger is? It's not so much with how much is coming in or what's going out. It's where the level is in the lake. When that thing gets above 350, is that where you have to start? You have to hold it right now? The question I have for you, Mr. Coyle, is when 97 happened and we were 1 foot away, and by the way, it went up 10 feet in 24 hours, and that was with 160,000 going out. It went up 10 feet in the last 24 hours and was 1 foot from going over the top. Was the reserve changed after that in Lake Oroville?
Not to my knowledge.
You see? You see? Somebody wants more water, and they're not willing to build a dam, but they're willing to sacrifice us. That's true, Mr. Coyle. The reserve should have been increased at that point, because if you have that lake at 350, at 850 feet, and it goes up 4 feet. Matter of fact, right now, we're in big trouble, because if we got a Pineapple Express right now and melted that snow, we could have 300,000 cubic feet per second, and we can't handle that. And I know you can't get it down now because we're in a spot. You can get it down, and you can keep going down, and you need to. But I'm talking about increasing that reserve so that we don't end up in this situation again. If you don't increase the reserve, we're in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So you're Ryan?
Yeah, I'm Ryan. Thank you. I think everybody can hear me. I'm
Yes.
the neighbors with many of you in the room. I'm Ryan Sherwood, farmed here since the 1860s in Northern California. Yeah, right. Use the mic so it's on the right. And I've had a chance to be out on the dam with Director Croyle a time or two. So thank you for your efforts. I know you've been out there a long time. One of the things that's frustrating, I think, to this room before I get into my comments is that we oftentimes see people on the news with their sleeves rolled up and their blue jeans on and a plaid shirt and a hard hat and a vest, and all the information they're giving has been distilled by the Public Information Office and a group of lawyers from the governor's office and your office and every office on down the line. So I want to encourage you to keep open dialogue over everything. One of the biggest concerns in this room is not that terrorists are going to get the information, is that DWR won't maintain that dam or the spillways. That is the biggest concern to people, not that somebody in Afghanistan is going to use that and flood their farm. That's not the concern of the people in this room or their businesses and families. So beyond that, I think there's a concern that there's 4 ways to get water out of the dam. You have the emergency spillway, the regular gated spillway, the river valve outlet system, and the Hyatt power plant. All 4 of those outlets were damaged or not able to operate at capacity during a series of Pineapple Expresses in the wintertime. And I think the river valve system wasn't working because of some fire suppression equipment that was taken out in January, as I understand it. So we've got to get back to where all of those systems are capable of their design flows to handle the types of weather, climate change or not, that we're expected to experience here in California for the protection of our farms and families and businesses. So that's important. All four of those outlets need to work. And I think that DWR has some work to do on improving maintenance programs for them. Beyond that, we talked about these 270 or 300, 304 cubic feet per second. Cubic feet per second is about 2 acre feet. So 1 cubic foot going over for 24 hours is about 2 acre feet, just to put in perspective for a lot of folks in this room. And our levee system downstream can't handle that. Our levee systems are plugged and full of branches and debris and overgrown, and red tape has caused a lot of that. We know when we move water to Southern California, in and out, that it's in concrete, cement-lined channels. But up here, it's clogged and full of stuff. I want, by show of hands, how many of you in this room, your number one concern during this crisis has been the evacuation of fish from the fish hatcheries? None. None. And I think your first slide indicated that was one of the big things. That we saw the media every day darn near talking about the fish. And the people of Northern California that put up with this egregious crisis don't have a concern for that. I think it's important to get that into perspective. And for your
evacuation.
I realize that's a great point. The fish were a concern before the evacuation. That's right. That's exactly right. We were evacuating the fish before people. No. Thank you.
Ryan, I think you're not.
Staff has taken my 3 minutes, not me. So I have 3 minutes, not the staff.
Just a couple things. You do have 3 minutes. You do have 3 minutes. No, listen.
I think I'll have a lot of people yield me by 3 minutes, but when staff takes them up, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk to Director Kroll and provide our comments. I understand your job as a paid consultant is to do this, so thank you. We're going to carry on.
You get your 3 minutes. You get your 3 minutes. Okay, but if she asks, if you raise the question of the fish hatchery and she has a comment for it, I think it's also courteous just to listen to what she has to say.
Didn't raise a question about the fish hatchery. Wanted to point out the concern illustrated was not about fish in this room. That's the lack of transparency and trust I'm talking about. When staff takes that up and then you as the paid consultant moderating this forum want to continue to interrupt.
All right, keep going.
I have compliments to the local sheriff's office. Corey did a great job. Let's give them a round of applause. And number 4, I think going forward that it's important, as I mentioned to you at the base of the dam, 21 excavators are working out there, that this community's concerns need to be addressed. We have hearings in Sacramento day after day where legislators and the bureaucrats from Southern California get their concerns and issues addressed and raise them with you and your staff and your team. But oftentimes we don't see them here. Their boots aren't on the ground here. And I've implored with you and many other folks in this room to make sure that the concerns of residents here on the ground who are impacted by decisions done in Sacramento or LA by state water project contractors are taken into account, that this room's concern, this community's concerns are impacted. And finally, I hope that you support those claims. This is a yes or no question. Verified claims from our cities and our counties and our schools that have had major financial impacts. Will DWR support those claims if they turn them in under that URL there? Will DWR, hey, Jerry, state water project contractors, we need to support these claims. They're legitimate and they're recognized. Will you support those?
I'll support legitimate claims.
Fantastic. I'm thrilled to hear that. Thank you so very much. And again, compliments to you. Compliments to Bill Croyle. You were given a situation that you had no idea would occur. You didn't know the maintenance history. You didn't know how that dam was built or anything else. You stepped into this role very recently. Compliments to you for trying to get through this and to listening to this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so Justin Michelli, is it?
Yeah, you can read it.
Okay. I'm going to take a shot at it. Yeah, I'm making you get up out of your chair. You probably feel better getting out of that chair.
There you go. Well, we hear. We want the lake lower. I'm a farmer in the riverbank, like concerns of Brad Foster earlier. I have my livelihood underwater. 3 feet, and in the riverbank system that designed to handle 20 to 25,000, wouldn't touch an orchard. I'm a 4th generation farmer. My grandfather planted trees. I didn't go and encroach. I had a livelihood. My generations had livelihoods down the river bottom. And because of the mismanagement, you are now letting 35,000 CFS. If you would allow it to spill at a 20,000 CFS, we won't raise it up anymore. We get a helicopter right here. No one says we have to take it up to 865 to turn it back on. Let a little down the spillway. Tell me why that's not possible.
The concern is that we will damage the spillway what we have, and then we'll, at some point, need to close those gates and won't be able to use them, which means we are forced to fill the void space in the dam and threaten going over them.
So you're constantly making a concerted effort to choose the construction site over livelihoods, river sediment, erosion banks, municipalities, suckers, I mean, the rest of us.
My decision with our team and the advice of all of our modelers, our engineers, our inspectors, our regulatory agencies, is that I need to make sure that we can use that gated spillway through the rest of the snow melt season. If I do that at 20,000 and it starts unraveling, then I have to close the gates and I risk filling the reservoir. Now I'm told just a few days ago that that risk has now been minimized. But that number is not 860, it's not 880. The worst case scenario takes up higher than that, and I'm not willing to risk that. I need to be able to spill that water. I do appreciate the comments and the focus on the impact of 35 or 30 and the request for 20, because we're going to take that back to our engineers.
You wouldn't know, if it's not already too late, you know, I could show you pictures today after the deal of dead peach orchard. Those are gone. Those are gone. I'm begging on my walnuts now. They're planted in 2011. I've harvested them once. I have over $1 million invested in that 60 acres, 1.6 to be honest with you, and I have not had one change. Well, I had one harvest to break even my input costs, and I'm going to lose them all. So take that home. 20,000, keep it in the riverbanks, please.
Thank you.
So I have 8 cards left. Susan Shore. We're doing a quick battery change.
Good evening. Thank you, Director Coyle, for being here. I know this has been a long few months for you, and you were thrown into the pot. I don't see this as a lack of maintenance on the spillway. This is a lack of maintenance on the whole DWR system all the way to Sacramento. There are 22 miles of unmaintained channel on Butte Creek. I don't know if anybody in this room even knows that. The Cherokee Creek had levees built in the early 60s. They've never been cleaned. I have spoken before the Central Valley Flood Control Board many, many times. They want to build a whole new project. Why? Take care of what you have. That's all we want. Take care of what's here. That's important to us in our communities and our lives. Right now, my concern is, how is the afterbay being run? I'll let you answer that real quick. Could you have an answer?
How it's being run?
Yeah.
Azad?
What purpose, I guess, is it serving at this point in time of the dam issues, the spillway issues?
So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Pat Whitlock. I work at Oroville Field Division. So what Thermalito Afterbay does is it does provide water to the various water users. We have several turnouts out of the Afterbay to provide water.
I get that. I farm 2,000 acres of rice. There's no water I'm taking out anywhere right now except out the main to go down the Feather River. What we're concerned about is the up and down level. Right now, the Afterbay is murkier than we have ever seen it. I watched the dam be built. I've lived here all of my life. What are you going to do with the murky water? It's also supposed to be run for cold water issues. That was a warming pond for rice. We've proved that, FERC proved that, and yes, we get paid for our cold water, but we're not going to get paid for the dirt and the silt that have to run through our pumps this year, and will that affect our rice crops? We don't know. We want to know some answers on that.
Well, you have a good point, and I don't have the answers to that.
Well, it's darn near rice season, and we're probably going to get some water here pretty quick, we hope. But one of the biggest issues that I have with DWR, and I've spoken for 40 years off and on at DWR, and I've taken tours of DWR issues, the comment about, we'll get back to you later, I am sick of it. Absolutely sick of it. I sat in a courtroom for 10 days in 1976. My dad sued the Afterbay, sued the DWR. He did win, but it took 4 years. The Afterbay leaks. Are those pumps being run now, or are they not being run? Is that information available? If I PRA it, can I get those results of when the days those pumps run?
Yes, the pumps are being run. They run continuously. They're based on water levels in the wells.
If they run continuously and they're based on water levels, that doesn't make any sense to me as a water person.
So they run as long as the water levels in the wells tell the pump to keep running. There's a certain level they have to be at. If it drops below the probes, they turn off.
And what are those levels? Are they different on every pump? Are those available?
It varies, but we do have that information.
And that's available if I PRA it?
So
I would
hopefully you don't have
expect
to PRA it.
Huh?
So hopefully you don't have to PRA it. So, I mean, if you want to look at those records, it should be public records.
Yeah, we have that information.
So you don't have to go.
Okay, because I've heard several people lately from Water District people tell me that they've tried to get them and can't get them. Thank you. Thank you again, Director Coyle.
Okay, I have a question here with no name. It said I should read it. When will the river be able to sustain a 20,000 CFS flow?
Again, I think that's a comment we're going to take back to our operations team as we come back, coming off a spill. I think we'll have Hyatt Powerhouse back up. Is it the 10th? Or at least we're shooting for the 10th.
The Hyatt Powerhouse is operating right now.
I know, but it's at 7 versus.
It's at 8,000 CFS.
Okay.
And by the end of this month is going to be able to put out about 13,000 CFS, in addition to the river outlet system.
End of April?
End of May.
End of May.
Yeah.
So next month.
Yes. I apologize.
So I think part of the conversation, hopefully not confuse people. So right now we're running at 35, so we'll do a step down using the core criteria off the levees from 35 to 30 and then lower. So that's part of the strategy, and then bring the other levels up so that the release down the river really sees minimal change. It will drop, but the key is, what I'm hearing is don't go above 20,000. So as we step down into 20, I think we'll end up being below 20 just because of the operation of the Hyatt Powerhouse when we get it fully operational here in the coming weeks. Again, part of that will be when we step back up to do the last spill. And so I think that's why it's important to hear the impact on 20,000 so we can factor that in to our last spill.
Okay, Robert Miller. And then I have no name on that one and no name on that one. And Kathy Adams. Do you want your card?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I'm Robert Miller. I've been here all my life. My mother, yes, sir? Oh, that was me. I thought, oh, it's signing. My mom saw the dam when they would haul the dirt to the dam where she lived. And it was all from the clay pit where it's now. And my question is, will the local, of course, I'm the local weather watcher for Gridley. And I just wanted to ask, will there be in the future be any teleconferences on our local channels like it was not before? Because I know it was a one time, I think it was not in maybe February, March, either month, where the Sacramento channels were told, but not the Chico ones. And we were not, we were up here kept in the dark on some of the information on our media. And I know one's, and I know our local governor, one of the Sacramento channels is in his pocket. And so we just wanted to make sure that we're not, because we should be known or told anything in the dam, or known like here tonight what we were doing. Then these more meetings are really good for the area, and just not let Sacramento tell us what to do or think that we're just we're just here. They just want the water up here, and we're just nothing but we're a bunch of small town hicks. So just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Kathy Adams, I can read that? Okay. So this comment is, Bill Croyle has repeatedly stated this evening that we will provide information and documentation to follow up to some of the very good questions being asked. How will this information be conveyed to everyone here today? Email, newspaper, personal letter, online? How do we get the information out, Director?
Yes. One of the things that we're working on, we'll have a listserv up here pretty soon in a day or so. We'll take these questions back, the comments, right up through a questions and answer, a FAQ type document, and push that out. So the ways to contact us are here on this line. If you sign up or let us know your email address, then we can push that information back out to you. Again, putting up a listserv, for those that maybe don't know what that is, that's a way for us to broadcast information directly out to you that you choose to receive. But also we have our Twitter and Facebook account that's available. And then we're also looking for other ways to communicate with the public. So to the extent you have a special group or a special forum that we can push information to, then that way we can broadcast this information as far and as broad as we possibly can.
Don't forget your YouTube channel. It's not on there.
Okay?
We don't have our YouTube channel on here. Okay, we better do something about that. And I actually,
But I want to
Yeah.
make sure, so we have a number of FAQs that we've got to finalize and push out. So, those are the things that we should have out before these kinds of meetings, so you come, informed, or if you have a concern with what you're reading, we can talk about it. And so, again, there's a huge effort. We've bolstered up the team to be able to conduct these kinds of meetings and be able to collect, and then really the most important part is push back the information to you so you could see that your questions and concerns have been addressed or not, then we want you to back engage us, right? It's gonna help make sure that we're all on the same page, even on some aspects of this we may not agree on, but I think it's to better understand exactly why things are happening or not happening, issues regarding sensitive information, and then we can work through those different challenges to make sure your concerns are addressed. So if you have a different way that you don't see up here, other than you don't see the listserv contact information, but if you send us an email, then we can push that listserv information back out to you when you're interested. But if there's another way that you want to communicate with us, please let us know. I think, where's Erin at?
Erin,
Yeah.
she's right there.
There you go. So Erin's the point person for making sure if you have another idea or comment on how to engage us, don't let her leave without giving your contact information.
Right.
Thanks, Erin.
All right, so Tom Zito, are you still here? I can. All right. So who will be responsible for the rebuilding of the surface road when they fail under construction traffic, when their structural sections are for residential and recreational traffic? Right.
It's a good question, Jeannie.
Who wants to answer this question?
Christy?
You want to answer that, Christy? And let people know who you are.
I'm Christy Jones. I'm the Acting Deputy Director of the Security and Emergency Management Program at DWR. So we are working with Butte County and the City of Oroville and any other folks who are affected by the haul routes that the construction will be coming through. And we do plan to reimburse and refurbish the roads as we use them for our construction trucks. We will actually do the work. We will actually fix them after all the construction is done.
Yeah. Right. That's your second question. Is the dam road sound enough to handle construction traffic?
It is rated for highway loads. So yes, it is sound.
All right, I have 2 speaker cards left.
Wait, let's back up. Did we address your question? Sorry.
Did you get the answer to your questions
Did you
about
get the answer to
the
your
roads?
question? Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
All right. So there are 2 questions here, or 3, that don't have names, so I'm going to read these. The first is there's people are on the Facebook page, and they're asking a basic question: are we safe now? Let's pose it for the director.
That we are safe. We've done an amazing amount of work. I mean, it's not pretty. I mean, we have a damaged spillway. We've mitigated the concern with regard to the emergency spillway. I can't say enough about the work that was done to protect and maintain and operate Hyatt Powerhouse. So the river valves are almost being completed. So we are on top of the snowmelt process. We know this watershed. We've been here for a long time. As you know, that's why the dam was built. We understand the snowmelt process. We are prepared through our modeling process and contingency plans for a nasty Mother Nature wrench. And we believe that based on the performance of the spillway and the gates that we have to date, and our actions at the Hyatt Powerhouse and the mitigation measures that we've done in the emergency spillway, that we are safe. I want to make sure that's clear. The dam has always been safe. The mitigation measures, the protective measures we've put in place are working. We have a lot of people watching to make sure that it continues to operate as designed or as mitigated. Okay, so we wanted to make sure that as we move through the X number of weeks, the next 4 to 6 weeks on the rest of the snow melt, we will continue to communicate any changes, any threats from weather. I mean, that's all part of, I haven't talked to Sheriff Honey in a little while because I was out of town, but his staff are very well embedded with our staff, so if there's any hint that we even are worried a little bit, they need to know. We'll make sure that we push that out to you so that you can kind of self-assess that information, but I believe you're absolutely safe. We're on the better, what's that?
Can I unpack my suitcase?
Can you unpack your suitcase? Well, this is the second question that's on Facebook. Will we have to evacuate again?
We need to be ready.
So let's go back to the sheriff. I think has done a fantastic job in general. By his leadership, standing beside me through the most difficult times, at least in my understanding. I understand those that have evacuated more than once in the past. But as we work through this, he's an amazing person to stand beside and problem solve and communicate with each other, as well as you, the public, and our key, whether it's regulatory or private entities that are responding to this. So I would unpack my bags.
I would unpack it?
I personally would unpack if I lived here. Downtown, I'm not sure if the lady was still there. But falling in line with the sheriff, because I do believe, as an emergency management background, as Christy, we're always kind of ready for what I call the dark cloud. It doesn't need to be a flood. I think being ready for fire, flood, a significant, fuel line accident, power lines out, all those kinds of things, being, not being worried, but being prepared in a proactive way is a lesson learned here. Understanding the mass evacuation maps on where you might go, like 1 or 2 spots, and having a backup plan for yourself is an important part. I think it's part of the learning process that we've all been through. And I think that this has been a difficult process for us all to go through. And so having your bags packed is, let's unpack our bags. At the same time, I think we need to be thinking about, do I have enough water if I lose my water supply? Do you have enough water to last a couple, 3 days? Do I have a place that I would go if there was a fire, whether you're in town or in the rural area? I think thinking about that, again, I wear emergency management hat. My wife tells me I'm always thinking the worst, but that's kind of what I'm trained to do. But on the other hand, I think that's part of in answering the question is that we should be prepared to help each other, not just ourselves, if something goes kind of tough for us. And I think as a community, we'll be better for it. We, the department, want to be part of that, working closely with the sheriff. The work that they've done for these mass evacuation maps, I think, is critical for this community to feel safer and feel more comfortable about getting information that you need. But if you're not getting it, we need to know, whether it's the sheriff's department, the Department of Water Resources, and other, our city, police, and others that want to hear that if you're feeling a little bit uneasy about the information you're receiving or not receiving, then we need to know.
Thank you.
I don't know if the sheriff's office wants to follow up on that.
Yeah, you're on.
Thank you. Everybody hear me fine, right? One quick thing I'll say about that. Are you safe? Sheriff Honey went through a lot of suffering, is what I called it, on making the right decision on the evacuation itself and on lifting those evacuation orders and the warnings and such, because he put a lot of time in with Mr. Croyle to make sure that public safety was number one. I don't think there's anybody in this room that has any doubt that Sheriff Honey's number one priority is all of you. So I'll say that. Thank you.
So there is another question. Apparently, it's been on Facebook. I think this is a yes answer. So This will be a good one. So the question is, will boating be allowed on the lake? What? Who wants to give the yes answer for that one? Aaron, you want to, does everybody know you? Maybe not.
Aaron Wright, I'm the superintendent for Lake Oroville area, and yes, we have boating on the lake. There's only a very small portion that's closed off.
A yes question. Okay. And so the last speaker card I have is from Nathan Wilkinson. Nathan, are you? There you are. Speaker cards? Would you like to speak?
Sure. I just have a couple of questions.
We'll make sure we get your questions answered. So, yeah. Okay, Nathan.
Just a couple things, Director. Transparency is not a partial concept, and I know you have security concerns, and I understand that and respect that. But people are asking valid questions, and they're not getting answers, and that's awkward. It's awkward for me representing the community here. It's awkward to hear questions that I have, and I have no background. I have no knowledge. This is not my expertise by any means. But I hear people making sense, and they're not getting answers. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm sure others are uncomfortable. I think that's something to consider taking a deeper look at, how transparent you're willing to be. I don't see the risk in transparency. What I do see the risk to is DWR's reputation for lack of transparency. There isn't trust of your agency. There isn't, and you have to re-earn it. And I think you can, and I hope you can. I think this is a terrible situation. It's a crisis. It's awful. But when you come out of crisis and you look forward, you look upward, and you look towards a positive change, it's your opportunity. This is your opportunity. This is your department's opportunity to change an entire region's perception of you. I think you have amazing staff. I know some of them. They're great people. I'm kind of tired of feeling like they're being sent to slay a dragon with a rubber sword. I really feel at times the safety record at that facility is not so hot. I think we all know that. That's been well publicized. I think we can do better, and I'm confident you can. And I appreciate the staff. I appreciate you, Director Coyle, coming out and doing this. I know you all anticipated some heat, and I appreciate your willingness to take it. I honestly expected you to get more. So I'm happy for you, because I thought this could have gone sideways for you. I struggle with the concept of fish before people. And I'm going to put something out there. Huge effort to save the fishery, and I respect that. I think it's important. I value the environment and being a steward of the area we live in. The reason we were able to evacuate citizens was because the Beeline Transit drivers volunteered. They volunteered to come into a danger zone and evacuate people. They are contracted. They had no obligation to do that. Their employers had to ask them to volunteer. And without them, I don't believe we would have gotten as many people out. And I don't think that when you put up about saving the fish and you leave that part out, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot. I think you need to talk about the peoples whose lives were taken out of risk by those who volunteered to go into the danger zone. There needs to be more cooperation and collaboration with downstream entities, agencies, and businesses. There are agencies downstream who have to manage your choices. And if you don't involve them, if they don't have a seat at the table, you're setting us all up for failure. You control the flow. You've got your hand on the flow knob. And obviously I know it's more than just a knob, but you have control of that system. It leaves the rest of us to deal with it, because that isn't your role. That's the rest of our roles. You've got to have those people at the table. You've got to have business and farmers at the table. I don't think enough of them are at the table. I want to echo everyone's appreciation and gratitude for our public safety entities, and especially Sheriff Honey. You know, it was a very awkward time there in the beginning. I was in LA, and I saw the text message come from a friend who took a picture of the spillway. There's a chunk missing. And instantly my mind just, okay, I'm headed home, because I knew what that meant. It meant nothing good. In the beginning, you guys did not manage the message well. You did not manage the information well. You created the chaos. Your lack of information, your lack of quality information, comments like auxiliary spillway versus emergency spillway, and then back to emergency, those sorts of things can't happen. And I realize it's an emergency, I realize things are crazy and it's chaotic, but I am thankful that Sheriff Honey stepped in and pulled that lever and took command, because at that time I had zero confidence in your control and command of the situation. I'm becoming more confident. I'm hopeful to be confident. I would like to see efforts like this to continue to earn that confidence. Thank you all for taking the effort and time to speak with us this evening.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got, let's see, you've got a speaker card for me there, and I've got another one. Okay. You want to introduce yourself there?
Yeah, I'm Ross Patterson. Got raised here in the Sacramento Valley. Been downriver here now since '81. There's a couple of concerns about the structure of the dam. I've got over 40 years in aggregate and shot rock quarries behind me, so I know a little bit about the structure. I've also worked with the #2 geologist from the Auburn Dam project after it was shut down, and I asked a lot of questions, and he explained a lot of stuff to me. What I see in the design flaw right now, what needs to be added, is that all of the area from the top of the dam to the water side, and probably back this way, needs to be core drilled and grout pumped in to seal all the fissures and cracks in that rock. That's the reason why all that blew out. There was nothing there to hold it together. And that's one of the main flaws all the way through the Sierras in our beds. And we know that a lot of that rock that's all brown colors and stuff is a softer rock. It's not suitable to hold up high pressure without some help. Now the other thing, let me come up and draw a little picture here on your scale or your paper. He's got
Here you go. You got a preferred color?
Doesn't matter.
All right.
Something that I just read today. This is basically the outline of the river channel where the dam sits. And the report that I read today said that we've had a normal settling on this side of the dam. This side, where there's this steep wall, it has 2 times the settlement that this other side has, and this top part up here hasn't caught up with it. That could lead to why there's a water drainage problem. And I think there's some core drilling needs to be done, and at least pump in some bentonite to seal that back side of that dam back up, because somewhere that water's coming through. And when you get 2 times on a steep wall, and it's a design flaw, it's not your fault. It's something that happened in the 60s and 50s when this thing was designed and put together. But we need to address it.
I'm not familiar with that, but we'll look into that.
Okay. I have 1 speaker card left. Do you want to read your questions, or would you like me to read them?
Doesn't matter, you can go ahead.
Okay, so the first question is, Which agency is responsible for repairing the erosion along the Feather River banks? Is that an official response?
I'm saying there's local agencies that are responsible.
The LMAs? Is that who we're talking about, the local maintaining agencies? So who can you speak with to get more information in response to your question? Someone here want to provide some more information about how the levees are maintained, repaired?
Well, I have property
Yeah.
next to the river, and now my neighbors tell me I have a code, CODE.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of my trees fell into the river. I'm not on the level of the gentleman and the lady that spoke, unfortunately. But, I want to know who's going to fix it.
Right.
It's right near the levee that runs through my property.
Right.
So I think we find out where your property is, I'm looking at Liz over there, we
I
can
think somebody has come out from DWR. I think my neighbors have called, and they came and put up little pink things, little flags. But I want to know, what's the requirement to file a claim, if there is a requirement? Where do I file a claim just to protect my rights? I'm just looking to have that part of my property fixed. The other thing is,
Yes.
is there a claim filing deadline?
Is there a deadline to file a claim?
File a claim, just to protect myself.
Let me just say,
Protect everybody else in here.
let me just say we need to confirm the answer to that question, and that might be a question that actually only a lawyer can answer legally, but we need to get you the answer. So we'll find out. Okay. So information about the maintaining agency or who's repairs the damage and your claim and the deadline
Property damage, what's their address, and what's the deadline,
for a
if
claim.
any, for filing a claim, so we protect our rights.
Right.
Yeah,
Got it.
right, and you have my email address.
It's right on here.
Right,
Okay.
thank you so much, and you will get back to me then?
Well, we're not going to let you leave until we talk to you, actually. So stay tuned.
Is the question on her card, though? I mean.
Yes, it is.
All
It's
of the questions? Okay.
Yeah, they're on the card. All right. I have no more speaker cards. So I'm going to turn it over to the director.
Thank you. Again, I want to express my appreciation for your time and energy to come out away from your homes, away from your families, to come and talk with us today. This is a two-way conversation. We have some homework to do. We have some answers to get back to you. Again, I would encourage you to make sure before you leave, have this contact information so that you can reach out to us and become part of being informed as we push the FAQs or the questions and or the comments, questions, and answers back out to the communities. For those that can't be here tonight, encourage them as well to sign up as the way they feel appropriate, or attend one of our future meetings. And we do have a number of meetings coming up, so hopefully we have flyers available. If somebody doesn't receive these, or we can get you the information. I think this is also posted up on our site, on the Oroville Incident website. Again, I want to express my appreciation, but also, again, say I'm sorry we're going through this. This is difficult for you, certainly difficult for our agency and our partners that are all engaged in this. We're all had other things to do and plans this spring and summer. It's going to be a pretty busy summer and fall for all of us as we go through this reconstruction to make sure that later this year you feel safe and you don't have to pack your bags. We're going to get, this is a no-fail project for us. We have contingency plans in place to make sure that that doesn't happen, so that you don't have to pack your bags later. But we want you to be prepared and be thinking about this. But again, we have a 6 more of these meetings to come. This won't be the last time. Even these are the meetings that are scheduled. We'll be scheduling more meetings with the electeds at the various levels to make sure that they stay informed, working through the technical issues that you've brought to us tonight and those in the future meetings, and pushing that back out to make sure that we can give you the information to make sure that you're informed, you feel safe, and you understand exactly where we are as we go through this process together. So with that, again, I thank you for coming tonight. I thank you for the cards. If you have comments and ideas about our process here tonight, again, please let us know so we can adjust and reformat our other future meetings to make sure that they're efficient and effective at communicating with you. Again, thank you very much.